with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
And I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It's Thursday, August 18th, 2022. My name is not Sam Seder, nor is it Emma Vigiland. It is, though, Matt Binder. And this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. And I just messed up Emma's last name, didn't I? But that's okay, because we are broadcasting live, not from Brooklyn today, but steps from Citi Field, home of the Mets, New York's #1 baseball team right now, in the real heartland of America, Queens, New York City. On the show today, we will be talking with author Catherine Liu to discuss her book, Virtue Hoarders, the case against the professional managerial class. Also on the show, the federal judge who approved the Mar-a-Lago search warrant is going to hold a hearing today for press. Trump attempts to play 4D chess by endorsing Democratic primary candidates in New York, like Caroline Maloney, who in turn has rejected his endorsement. The price of chicken wings have dropped to 4-year lows. Let's go, Brandon. Big tech companies like Facebook owner Meta, Twitter, and TikTok have renewed enforcement of their misinformation policies in preparation for the upcoming midterm elections. On that same social media beat, the anti-LGBTQ account Libs of TikTok has apparently been banned from Facebook amid a campaign that has resulted in her right-wing followers sending death threats to the Boston Children's Hospital over transgender care. Also, I think the big news today is top Trump executive Alan Weisselberg has pled guilty to fraud in New York. More will obviously come out of that as things progress. Apparently, Weisselberg will give he could be called to hearings for Trump's own legal woes in the future. All that and much, much more on the show. And it's just me, Matt Binder, and producer extraordinaire Matt Leck on the show today. I guess we can call this the Matt-jority Report, if you will, right, Matt?
Yeah, it's a Matt-jority Thursday until Brandon gets here, at least.
Right, and then it's an all boys day when
Thursdays for the boys.
Thursdays for the boys, right? Oh man, little callback to you got to play that one in the going into the second half, right?
What, like the Trump version of that meme, or what?
No, there's the one where there's the second half intro where I believe I even go like, "Oh, Thursdays for the boys" or something like that.
Oh, really? Maybe I just haven't heard it. It's in the new one. We will play that one.
I think so. Yeah, the
okay,
one. Yeah,
that's
the one. Right. But before we get to our guest, I feel like we should play this clip because, there's nothing more manly and masculine than a strong, steadfast, conservative male, right, Matt? I mean, that's the prima donna, that's the gorilla mindset right there.
Yeah, alphas.
Hell yeah. So
a scientific classification of masculinity.
Absolutely. So let's play this clip of one of those alpha males right now.
If they were to call you, the committee, to come and testify, talk, would you be agreeable?
Well, I would, if there was an invitation to participate, I would consider it. But you've heard me mention the Constitution a few times this morning. On the Constitution, we have 3 co-equal branches.
Let's just pause a little bit to explain to some folks what's happening. So he has to kind of play both sides of the fence here. He has to say that he'll simultaneously cooperate because he doesn't want to go to jail like the CFO of Trump org. But he also has to be tough for the base here and be like, oh, I don't know if I can actually do that.
Right. And to give it a little more context for the people who are listening to the podcast version of the show without the visual, that is, of course, former Vice President Mike Pence. And he's at an event speaking, and he's being asked, oh, would you provide testimony or would you speak to the January 6th committee if they invited you to talk about what happened that day? I mean, they were the Trump supporters, the MAGA faithful, who showed up to attempt to overturn the election results, or thought that's what they were there to do on January 6, 2021. I mean, their number one goal on top of, overturning the election for Trump was, Mike Pence's head, right? I mean, they were angry at him for not doing it. I mean, if Mike Pence was brave enough to stand up and say, no, I am overturning the choice of 80 plus million people who voted for Trump's opponent, and just hand it all to Trump because that's what I can do, apparently, even though that's not what he can do. Because he didn't just do that. They had to go down there and storm the Capitol building. So they were really pissed at him. So there's more to that clip, right?
Yep.
If they were to call you, the committee, to come and testify, talk, would you be agreeable?
Well, I would, if there was an invitation to participate, I would consider it. But you've heard me mention the Constitution a few times this morning.
Lay it on thick, Mike.
On the Constitution, we have 3 co-equal branches of government. And any invitation to be directed to me, I would have to reflect on the unique role that I was serving in as Vice President. It'd be unprecedented in history for a Vice President to be summoned to testify on Capitol Hill. But as I said, I don't want to prejudge. If there's ever any formal invitation rendered to us, we'd give it due consideration. But my first obligation is to continue to uphold my oath, continue to uphold the framework of government enshrined in the Constitution that has created the greatest nation in the history of the world. And we'll do that. And we'll do that.
Right. That's basically a lot of blah, 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 a lot of talk, a lot of words for Mike Pence to still, to this day, try to sort of play both sides. Like, he knows that there is a very, 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 very small, tiny base of Republican Party faithful who are going to fall for that talk that he's currently throwing out there, all about what Mike Pence's duty is and all the norms. There's not much left of that in the Republican Party, but that's who he's talking to, because he knows those are the people who, if he decides to actually run for president, which this little tour he's on is all about, those are the people who are going to bolster his campaign and give it the backbone it needs, at least while it gets started. And honestly, in my opinion, that's all he's ever going to get, that very tiny minutia of Republicans right there who fall for that sort of rhetoric. But he also thinks he can play to the MAGA crowd. I think that's what this is all about, where he doesn't want to promise that he's going to go in front of the horrible, evil January 6th committee, because that would be unprecedented. I mean, I'm all about being just an upstanding former vice president and following the rules, according to Mike Pence. So, we'll see how this plays out for him. It makes him, as a dirty leftist, it makes him look extremely weak and docile to me. I don't know about you, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, I like the way that he's doing basically a George W. Bush impression, where like half the words are him inhaling. So it's like, the Constitution, I'm going to have to think really hard about my oath and stuff like that. And it's like, man, I don't know if that really works post-Trump. Like that was a pre-Trump sort of conservatism. I mean, good luck trying to make it fly now.
Right. I mean, we now know that there is one oath for the vast majority of Republicans, and that is the oath to Trump, fealty to Trump, being all about, I mean, that's what Trump himself is all about. It's not loyalty to his office or even any of the supposed values he claims to be for. It's all about loyalty to the man Donald J. Trump, which, in the eyes of the Republican Party, Mike Pence already has none of. There's no loyalty to Trump because if there was, he would have overturned the election results on January 6th, 2021.
And Brad, we just want the truth. It's simple.
All right, folks, we got a quick message from our sponsors delivered by Sam Seder himself, I believe. And after that, we will be back with author Catherine Liu to talk about the Professional Managerial Class.
Recording now? Can't load. 1 second. Recording now? Hold on 1 second. Let me just. Oh boy. All right, just a quick word from our sponsor today. It is already making me hungry. And I just had some for breakfast. Magic Spoon cereal has got that sweet flavor and crunchy texture you love from childhood. But are you ready for this? It's healthy. There are 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and only 4 to 5 net grams of carbs in each serving. It's low carb, it's keto friendly, it's gluten free, it's grain free, it's soy free, and only 140 calories a serving. And now you can build your own box with a huge variety of flavors. You can check out the classic flavors, the cocoa, the fruity, the frosted, and the peanut butter, and the cult faves, blueberry muffin, maple waffle, and honey nut, or the indulgent ones, cookies and cream and cinnamon roll. Well, now, wait a second. How is honey nut a cult fave? Honey nut has been like, so for me personally, and I think everybody knows this. Like I get into a rut, I get into a habit, cinnamon every day. But the honey nut I find extremely tempting because that's what my kids love. Middle of the night, cinnamon. Don't want the honey nut. Some like weekends, maybe honey nut for me or cookies and cream. I'm hungry now. And then I mix the peanut butter and the cocoa. But that's it. Kids like the fruity. It's awesome. And the best part is I'm giving this to my kids and I'm not filling them full of sugar. Go to magicspoon.com/majority report to grab a custom bundle of cereal. Try the magic for yourself. Be sure to use our promo code majority report at checkout. You save $5 off your order. And Magic Spoon is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember, get your next delicious bowl of guilt-free cereal at magicspoon.com/majority report. Use the code majority report. You save $5. Thank you for Magic Spoon for sponsoring this episode. Thank you for sponsoring my midnight snacks. Thank you for sponsoring my breakfast, my kids' breakfast, and for me not feeling like I'm a bad parent because I'm feeding them a bowl of sugar, which I am not doing. Apparently, it's like monk fruit extract. I don't care. The kids love it and no sugar. That's awesome. All right. Now back to Matt.
We are back. My name is Matt Binder. This is the Majority Report. And joining us now is Catherine Liu, author of the book Virtue Hoarders, The Case Against the Professional Managerial Class. And she's a professor of film and media studies at UC Irvine. Catherine, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, pleasure to be here.
Now, Catherine, I was reading this book, and the Professional Managerial Class is something, and everyone should go check this book out. It's one of the great things about it too is it's a quick and really short read. It's only about this big, which is perfect for someone who has to go through all this stuff and read everything. So I was able to take it all in and really get an understanding of your analyzing of the professional managerial class. And this is something we've talked about on this show before. And I think for people who listen, they know what the PMC is, the professional managerial class. But for people who might be tuning in for the first time and are saying to themselves, what in the world is the PMC, professional managerial class? Can you break it down for us? What does that mean?
So the professional managerial class today are people who hold higher degrees, often belong to professional organizations like doctors, AMA, like professors like me. We have professional organizations that are supposed to regulate what we do. Lawyers have the Bar Association. And within this class, we have like also striations, because people who go to a state school like the one I teach in, which is still, pretty elite, are different from people who go to the Ivy League, or different from people who go to the small liberal arts colleges. And today's media and content producers are inordinately dominated by PMC people who have gone to elite universities, elite graduate schools, and then come from a very tiny handful of schools, mostly on the East Coast. So to give a little historical background, they're also white collar workers, right? And I like to define them as people who are not working with their bodies. So in 1900, let's say in America, which was mostly agricultural and with a growing industry base, there were only 3% of white collar workers or professionals. And today of the workforce, today they make up about 25% of the workforce. They were defined by Barbara and John Ehrenreich as a group of vanguardists on the liberal left in 77 who were completely taking over left liberal organizing spaces like the Democratic Party. And what they saw was this professional managerial class dominance of liberalism at the expense of working class people and working class interests. So that's one thing I want to make clear. The other thing that I've noticed online, because I sometimes do spend too much time online, is that people have started taking up working class as a kind of purity politics. Like, I'm working class, you're a PMC scumbag. And it's like, that's not class analysis. The PMC actually loves to moralize things and to make things like pure. Like, they're pure, they recycle, they do lifestyle maintenance type things. But the other thing about this class is that it really, really works hand in glove with capitalism. We're not judging. Like, true leftists do not judge. Like, we analyze, we critique, we take down. But one of the things that we should do is keep our ire for capitalists, right? So, but at the spear tip of the PMC, you have people like Mark Zuckerberg, who was born into a professional managerial class family, or even, Bill Gates, right? And they're able to turn their social, cultural, economic capital into this kind of entrepreneurial wherewithal, and they've ascended to the capitalist class. So there is like a tiny bit of social mobility between the spear tip of the PMC and the capitalist class. But most professional managerial class people, like me, like probably you, we're wage laborers. We go to work, we depend on our paycheck. We don't live off capital. And that's like a really important thing to understand, is that the PMC really are workers. They're salaried workers. And there's this one really great way that Siegfried Kracauer in 1929 defined the salaried masses. They were people who were paid by a salary rather than by the hour. And oftentimes they didn't make as much as, industrial working class people who worked in factories. They were like paper pushers in Berlin, but they looked down on people who work with their bodies. So they could be like salesmen. They could be even the clerks at, the lowliest sales clerk at a department store. But for themselves, for their consciousness, they thought they were better than working class people. But they were part of a segmentation of workers in the working class that happens under capitalism. As capitalism becomes more and more complex, industrial production becomes more and more efficient, so we don't need so many people in the factories or in the farms, and we need a lot more people to manage the flows of capital, to manage people, to reproduce capitalism itself. So that's what I like to, how I like to define it. But I really want to come out strong against this like moral critique that people default to in America. Like, just stop. That is not leftism. Like, say, you're PMC scum, I'm really pure. It's like, fuck that. Fuck that. That is not politics. What do you stand for? What are you doing? What do you say? It's not about identity. Politics. PMC is a category that defines your relationship to a mode of production. Like, try to keep that in your little leftist brains to be leftist. I'm really mad about this, actually, that that working class has now taken on all of the aspects of another identity. It's not. It's a relationship to the means of production. It's a relationship to your boss. It's a relationship to the economy. That makes it really different from any like essentialist notion of like, this is my identity. I'm this, I'm that, I'm a unicorn, I'm a frog, no. I just want to say that right now. Sorry, you've got me on a little
I'm glad, because I think this is really one of the interesting things about this, new class. Like you mentioned, John and Barbara Ehrenreich in 77 come up with this term. And I'm sure as time has gone on, since 77 to now, there is a whole slew of new jobs, not just new professions, totally new industries, thanks to technology, the internet, etc.
And also the financialization of the American economy, because we offshored all our jobs, and then we created we're content producers, financialized people. And so there are also Orthodox Marxists or whatever, who are saying no, that class did not exist in Marx. We can't talk about it. And it's like, you know what? Things have changed since 1846. Marx's class struggle is still the engine of historical change. We should always remember that. But there actually has become striations within the working class.
Right. I feel like, when it comes to the working class and, the ownership class, it's a lot more well-defined, whereas it seems like PMCs, and I've seen this, like you mentioned online, it seems like people rage at individuals that they consider to be PMCs, and then people who don't consider themselves to be PMCs rage against that. So, I feel like let's sort of set the stage here, because I want to make this sort of clear. Is the term white collar, like the white collar jobs, is that interchangeable terminology for the professional managerial class? Are all white collar jobs PMCs?
Not well, yes, in some ways, because white collar jobs mean you don't work with your bodies, but there are also lower level white collar jobs, higher level white collar jobs. The historical, let me be a little pedantic here. The historical background is that C. Wright Mills, leftist sociologist from Columbia University, writes the book White Collar in the 1950s. He's already anticipating this growing group of people who do not work with their bodies, but who are wage earners, right? And so they are, manning the bureaucracy. For him, it's like the post-New Deal government bureaucracy is empowering white collar people. The other thing about 1953 is you've got the beginnings of the Cold War. So you've got engineers, modelers, nuclear strategists. These people are becoming more and more powerful within American politics and economics. And so, you have the white collar crazies like Dr. Strangelove in Kubrick's film who are, mad scientists. And then you've got the white collar secretary who's working, in the front of an office. And you can say like, well, that's incredible, like range of professions. But what the thing is about the PMC and the salaried masses that Krakauer talked about was they love to distinguish themselves from people who work with their bodies and people who actually damage their bodies through work. And, one of the things that the Marxists of the early 20th century said was we actually have enough productive capacity and efficiency to sort of liberate people from this kind of backbreaking work. But why is leisure time? Why is better work being hoarded just for a small few? And why are people who are doing backbreaking work or becoming like a reserve labor force? They're just perpetually unemployed, or they work, they break their bodies in 10 years, then they're cast aside. Like one of the things that we should think about is that capitalism has actually evolved to a point where we're more efficient about production, and we should have everyone enjoy the fruits of that efficiency. But the PMC doesn't want that. Neither does the capitalist. So.
Right. But, I will say, I will push back a little bit. Sometimes I get some really bad carpal tunnel. So, I mean, I do.
Oh, true. Me too. My back really hurts. No, I know. We have like the small motor problems. I know. Sitting can be really bad for you.
It can. Yeah. But, the interesting.
That's why you need to do yoga, Matt. You need to do a yoga.
Yes, I need what I need is a good manager who can get me all those sort of that sort of mindset where I need to
wellness. You need like a wellness program.
Right. Yes. Now I think a lot of people know exactly the type you're talking about. A perfect example I think in modern times is someone who lives in suburban America and puts out one of those signs where it says like, in this house, we believe Black Lives Matter and climate change is real, et cetera, et cetera. And then these are the same people who, when a waiter or waitress is a little bit slow to their order at a restaurant, they ask, oh, I want to see your manager.
Yeah. There's that, which is just irritating. But there's also the fact that they voted against Bernie Sanders. They hate Bernie Sanders. So they might believe in science, but they actually don't believe in socialism, which is actually a more rational way of managing a complex economy, right? So they can believe that Black Lives Matter, but they don't want to have like lower income housing in their neighborhoods. Like there are material things that this class could have done in 2016 and 2020 to vote against the professional managerial interests that dominate the Democratic Party. And they did.
Right.
So you know what I have to say to that? It's like, don't pretend to be on the side of progress, because you just screwed us so badly. Sorry.
Right. No, right.
I have a very dark view of the world right now, but I don't want to. But I do think that they're guilty. I mean, we're guilty. I'm guilty, but I try to point out our collective responsibility for the really bad state that we're in. Oh, by the way, like the Inflation Reduction Act, really good for fossil fuel companies, but also really good for upper middle class suburban people because of all the tax rebates on solar and electric vehicles. So why isn't there a real infrastructural investment in public transportation? No, because this class actually stands in the way of progress.
Right. One of the interesting things about the PMC class, as it's defined, it seems like a lot of it is like a lot of what's behind it has to do with, I guess, what we would call, and you don't really see this in, the basic definitions of working class or the capitalists. It seems like it revolves around these cultural identities more so than any sort of, obviously the work has something to do with it, the type of work, but even more so than like your income level.
So I think of that as being kind of aspirational. There are people who, like, especially of your generation, who are born into like professional managerial class positions, but their situation is unstable. Economic situation is terrible, right? Or you're working class kid, you're really smart, you go to college, and then you're inculcated in these consumerist values, and you think like that's what you want to identify with. There's this mode of consumption rather than like an understanding of how we are all related to the economy through a mode of production. And that's something that has happened in the post-68 era as well, where a lot of leftism started to focus on consumerism and lifestyle rather than production. And the thing about the PMC is that it wants to look at the rural industrial working class as backward. And that really happened in 68. That really happened because they were the political divide, the false political divide that we have today, it really was born then. Like the hippies were, they all went to college. A lot of them went to college. They went to, they assumed positions of power. You might want to call them boomers today, but they thought themselves really superior to these backward Americans, to these backward working class people. And that kind of consumerist lifestyle progressivism is really, it's the kind of progressivism we have today because of the domination of the PMC, of left liberal spaces, if you like. The other thing is the Cold War. And no one wanted to speak the language of historical materialism, class struggle, class agitation. And, you have a class that's very craven with regard to its own positions of power because it's intermediary. It always wants to climb up. And so it plays into the hand of U.S. imperialism, anti-communism. In the book, I say, like, if it actually believed in liberalism, it would be skeptical about its own positions. But it's also, in the neoliberal age, given up on any kind of liberalism, I would say, like high liberalism, and it engages in a form of, I would say, like actual obfuscation of material interests and material struggles of people. So people who are in academia, who are like leading thought leaders, or, from especially deconstruction in the 80s and 90s, they thought of Marxism and materialism as being vulgar. John and Barbara Ehrenreich were heavily criticized for their own theories of the professional managerial class and from a position of leftist orthodoxy too. But from all different sides, they were getting it. And so then in 1989, the Soviet Union falls, and it was like, see, capitalism is fantastic. Right. And this class is really a good apologist for power. It always was, because historically speaking, it's linked to courtiers, it's linked to the clerical class. It's a literate class that, interprets the truth, interprets science, interprets the book. And they're just like the biggest, kiss assers in the world. So who rules us? Who's in power?
Right.
Blackstone. Okay, sorry.
No. I thought it was a rhetorical question, actually. Pretty much.
Who's your boss? Who's our boss?
Right. But here's the thing that sort of it makes me feel like again, we discussed how like the things have changed since this term was coined. I feel like there is an interwar, like a civil war between PMCs, because what you see now, especially like talking in the present day right now, we see a group of people, probably my age and younger, I'm 35, who grew up in a time where we were told, due to how the capitalist system works, where you need to aspire to a higher education, you need to at least go to college, you take out whatever loans necessary. Whereas the older PMCs, they're not starting, like they didn't start with that same debt that these younger PMCs are now dealing with. So they're at a whole different income level. In fact, some younger PMCs might even be in a situation worse than some people who chose not to go to college and instead
Yeah.
start a small business or something. On top of that, you then now hear that these younger PMCs, or people who would be considered PMCs, who are on the younger end of PMCs, and millennials and Gen Z and incoming generations after that, they are begging for relief of some sort to help them at least get on the level so they can work to, try to get back on track to where they should
Right.
be in their life. But then you have these older PMCs saying, no, this is on you. You should pay off your debts. This shouldn't be forgiven, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, that's a really good point. When you have over $100,000 worth of student loan debt, you are a slave. You're basically a chattel slave to whatever financial organization owns that debt, from Citibank to Sally Mae. You are going to carry a ball and chain for the rest of your life. Now, how did that happen? Escalating tuition costs, of course, in college, but also this ideological message that everyone got, which was that you had to go to college to get a better life. America has a social elevator. You get in that social elevator, it's called college, and you go up the elevator and you ascend to a higher level of income and lifestyle than your parents, etc. So what happens is that we have indebted not just one generation, but many generations of young people through this propagandizing of college. I'll give you an example of someone who I met recently who rejected that narrative. But, it is really exceptional. He didn't start his own business. It's a great way to go bankrupt, starting your own business, by the way. But he got a union job laying cables and digging posts for Southern California Edison. But he doesn't work for SCE. He actually works for his union. So he told me he makes $49 an hour, plus overtime if he works dangerous jobs, etc. And last year he made $195,000. He was 21 years old. But when I asked him what he did, he was very modest. He goes, I just dig holes. I go, that's not possible. You can't just dig holes. He goes, okay, I touch power. It's very dangerous. It's not for everyone. But my union does this, this, and this for me. I never have to look at an SCE boss. Southern California Edison is a really horrible company. Because I never have to deal with all the bosses. It's very, very old school. It's like they post the jobs. If I want to take a hurricane relief job in Florida, I can drive over there in my truck. But he goes, I try to tell my buddies that this is what they should be doing. He comes from a working class background. He goes, they're working minimum wage at Walmart or whatever. But he's like, the union does this, this, and this for me. There are 300 openings in California right now. No one wants to do these jobs. And there used to be a lot more of these kinds of jobs because unions were more powerful. The infrastructure was considered really important. And today we have, 300 jobs openings is a tiny drop in the bucket. But the whole idea was like somehow he was not propagandized into thinking like, I got to go to college and then I got to go, or even community college, and I'll transfer to a UC. If you come from a working class family, that seems like a good deal, except when you get to the UC, the costs are higher. Your grants and scholarships and Pell Grants probably don't cover all of your tuition. And what you've given up as a working class young person is earning ability during like your prime earning years. And that hurts you, it hurts your family. So I don't want to hear all this stuff about like how, oh, we've got so many grants and scholarships for working class students, from every university. It's like that just feeds the machine because everyone has to take out debt to make sure that, you can get food at the end of the month. You know what we've got? We've got a food pantry on campus. We're constantly asked to donate there. That's a tacit acknowledgement that a lot of our students are actually going hungry because of the high cost of living, the high cost of housing, and the high cost of tuition. Given that, we're still a complete bargain compared with, private universities. They also say things like, oh yeah, we've got such great aid. 50% of our students are on aid. Is it like a shell game then? You charge 50% of your students full tuition, which is $80,000 a year now for private schools. And then you give like $50,000 grants to your working class students, and they've still got to make up $30K somehow. So they take out loans. thinking this is going to better their lives. It's a complete con at this point. I'm sorry to say, I wish that higher education hadn't become this way, but it's fully financialized at this point. It is a toy of banks and loan making companies. Now everyone's going to tell you, oh, the costs of education are so high, we cannot afford this. Just think if we took the subsidies of banks that the federal government does of student loan debt and interest and just gave it as block grants to public universities. It'll never happen, because actually if public universities became free, like Bernie wanted, it would actually collapse the cost of all higher education. If Berkeley was free, if the UC was free, who would want to go to no one would from California at the West Coast actually would want to go to a small liberal arts college on the East Coast. You know what I mean? So it's just another scam. I hate to say this. So I tell people now, like, do not ever take out loans. Do not ever do not buy into the idea that, prestige, and do not indebt yourself with regard to prestige, and try to educate yourself in every possible way. Maintain your curiosity, and don't think that you have to be institutionalized in a higher education environment. Now, the thing is, if you're in your 20s and you want to read and do research, there are fully funded PhD programs. They're hellholes right now because of all the politics within it. But if you have a program, someone pays you to go to school, do it. But as an undergraduate, do not chase that prestige. Do not take out that loan debt. It's not, I mean, it sounds like people say like I pulled up the ladder. I mean, infrastructurally, like that ladder doesn't exist anymore. And it's by pure accident of things that happen. I was at the tail end of that ladder being pulled up. That ladder doesn't exist anymore. And it's not me pulling it up. The whole question of social mobility through education is one of the greatest shams in American capitalism. And because the PMC wants to be gatekeepers with regard to higher education, it is very, very invested in keeping up that illusion.
Right. So this is the sort of thing, though, that from what we're discussing right now, that makes me feel like the professional managerial class, as it's now fits into the current, sphere of the workplace and the labor force, sort of feels a bit outdated or not as well defined as the more traditional working class and the ownership class. Because, for example, like, someone like for example, who I was talking about, like, the people who are working an office job. I mean, I'm a journalist. I work in an office. I'm a union member too, part of the News Guild. Zero power over anybody. I'm not a manager over anybody. There are people who are well below me in terms of power in other jobs, I'm sure, like data entry workers. In fact, I know small business owners and actual managers call some of that like white collar work, like grunt work. Like they call that grunt work because they're just people sitting in front of a desk and filling out data that they're being shown. I feel like, a lot of people consider that to be PMC, and by definition, it seems like it is from our discussion, but it feels like that's sort of out of date, doesn't it? Or am I misunderstanding?
No. I think that, within the class itself, there are really stark strata. And if we want to revive the working class capitalist struggle, then maybe we should just tell people, like, you are working class. Like, this is, you go and you get this paycheck and you're being oppressed. If that's leftist education, 101, and I think that's good. I'm not quite willing to give it up yet, and maybe it's just because of the managerialism of the class. I mean, it does take this attitude like you are managing people and managing yourself. So maybe if you're a white collar worker and you're not managing anyone, then we have to just say you're working class. Don't identify with the PMC. Those are your bosses. Like you are a white collar working class person. And that would be a big shift. And I do think that's possible to really reconfigure that. Like you are literally being managed by someone else. You went to college, you think you're a professional, but you know what? I've also had people respond to me, respond to the book who are doctors and nurses, and they're like, "This is untenable. Like we're in situations in hospitals in our training where we are in debt." We are working 16 hours a day. We have no job protections. We're overburdened with regard to the patients we're taking care of. This is not what I signed on for in terms of patient care. It's all managed care. So what do you do with that? So do we take that kind of specialized trained people and say, and I think you say to them, yes, align yourself with the working class. Don't align yourself with the PMC. Don't look up, look sideways, look down. And I think that's important. That's really important. Like doctors, young residents of your age come out with, $200,000-$300,000 worth of debt. And they're like, we've been screwed. We've been told that, this is the brass ring to chase after. We can't give, our working conditions are horrible. So what I hope that what I want to do is just make clear that the structures of oppression that we live with, the exploitation that we live with. And I think maybe if you wanted to say that, the way to spark class consciousness among lower tiered white collar workers is to just use the working class thing, then, I'm for that. But I also don't think it should become like a purity politics. No, it's about struggle. It's about contradiction. And yes, every PMC person, if we could convert them, would be great. Like just say like your interests are not actually aligned with the interests of Warren Buffett or Bill Gates or your boss. Your interests are aligned with the interests of workers.
Right.
As a doctor, your interests are more aligned with the nurses around you than with Blue Cross Blue Shield or the HMO that you work for, the private hospital that you work for. Like defining what your interests are at work is really important. And I feel like the PMC is like completely deluded about its own role at work.
Right. I feel like teachers, especially at like the elementary school level, typically underpaid, and they're young, usually fresh out of school. And I mean that I feel like they are a good example of that as well. People who are underpaid but would be considered part of this professional managerial class.
Right.
Yeah.
Or professional class. So maybe we need to say there's a professional class of workers, and then there's a class of professional managers, and they're executing the will of the bosses on the professional worker.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I hate to get caught up in like the wording and the rhetoric, but other people do that. And I feel like it actually, it makes people take things in a certain way. Oh man, there was so much more I wanted to get to in terms of like, and I know there's like parenting aspects of this, but one thing I definitely want to get to before we run out of time, I want to talk a little bit about the political party part of all this, because you get to that in your book, especially with someone like a Donald Trump, who seems to, like you say in your book, really caught the ire of the typical person within the professional managerial class.
Oh, right. He is the violator of all norms. Like in the language of gaming and the Pokemon, he's the ultimate villain,
Right.
Couldn't have designed a better villain for the liberal. He violates norms. He has like horrible appetites. He's angry. He can't control himself. But the thing that he did was actually speak to a sense of American despair and outrage about what was happening. I mean, outrage in the wrong ways, but if you contrast him with the Democratic Party candidates who were just like, let us take care of you. We've got all the solutions. We're technocrats. When you know that they're in the pockets of big business, he was actually like screaming. He was like the big baby. And there's a part of us, each of us, I think, inside that's screaming. That's like this is just, we're headed towards disaster on so many different levels. And why can't the left speak to that? I think Bernie did speak to that. Bernie spoke to that the whole time, but it was the Dems who screwed him over. So that was really revealing. Trump was a really convenient villain so that the Democrats could reorganize around the sense of norms and transgression. Like he violates all norms, and we protect the norms.
Oh, absolutely. I think that type of liberal professional managerial class person who puts that sort of thing on a pedestal and views like civility politics as the most important thing imaginable is the absolute worst. But one thing that sort of strikes me as I was reading through the book and watching some interviews is sort of like just how PMCs, the discussion around PMCs is, and I mean that's sort of how it was defined early on, but it sort of focuses strictly on the liberal ideologies. What would you call like someone who could technically be, due to their class and social status, a PMC, but who would be a conservative? Like, for example, we saw a lot of that come out in full force, for example, on like January 6th, for example, when all these news reports were coming out about like the real estate agent flying the private plane to the Capitol building. Like, that's not like the worker who was like fooled by Donald Trump's fake working class rhetoric. That is someone who was fighting to protect their own place in the class structure.
So like according to Thomas Piketty's definition, like that real estate agent who flew his private jet in, he'd be member of the mercantile right. Maybe he didn't go to college. He just made like a giant bunch of money and he doesn't. And yes, he's participating in the Trump coalition. The person I thought you were going to mention, or people I thought you were going to mention, were going to be J.D. Vance and Josh Hawley.
So that's another.
Like they went to university. They went to fancy universities. They pretend to speak to the working class. They take on the most reactionary conservative positions, but they have this contempt for liberalism that their working class constituents can sort of identify with, even though they're just like little worms who went to Harvard and Yale and just like played the game. But I do think that I thought you were going to say that. So where do we align them? Like they're conservative, professional managerial class, or like even reactionary PMC people who play like up their appeal to working class people, or the disgruntled people who are disgruntled with liberalism.
Right. Like I think that is Trump. Like I think that is and still was and still is Trump's base. It's not so much those working people in middle America who were fooled by his fake working class rhetoric that he would spout. I think his main base is like the petty bourgeois, like the people who are fighting to keep their status, who I think minus the liberal like yoga cultural stuff and the wellness stuff, like minus that, I mean, they are who I feel like structurally would be somewhere between like the small business owner and then also the professional managerial class. Like I'm sure a lot of those people down there get a kick out of giving their labor workers, their grunts, as they would call them in some circles, a hard time every day in the office. Like the type that would like, I can't come to work today, my grandma died, you better be here, otherwise you're fired. Like that type of person, I think,
Right. No, they really got off on Trump being part of that reality TV show, like a really tough manager.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they're non-professionals, but they're like tough managers.
We also do see though, like I feel like especially with like the IDW, we see a lot of like, especially like
what's the
college,
IDW?
The intellectual dark web, like people like the Dave Rubins and Jordan Petersons, Barry Weiss, the types that like fixate on what's going on college campuses. And you do see, I feel like a number, it's still a small minority, but a number of like college professors come out with this idea that marginalized college students daring to have a voice and protest against someone speaking on a college campus, that they're somehow the biggest threat to American democracy there is, while also, putting on a pedestal some of these right wingers like a J.D. Vance, for example, who actually do threaten, I think, working people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the other thing that we have to say is that like most working class people don't vote. So the mobilization of what you call the petty bourgeoisie or like the mercantile right, the Republicans are really good at that. They might be able to peel off some of the working class vote, but most working class people just are completely politically demobilized. They say the two parties don't care about them, and it's true. They don't. So one of the things that has happened, though, within the past couple of years is that there has been a non-college educated, you could say, like more conservative, small business owner, petty bourgeois aspect and working class aspect of the Hispanic Latino vote that is peeling away from the Democrats. And I think that that is really an important phenomenon to take into account. With Asian Americans as well. We have to look at the configuration of liberalism that focuses completely on cultural issues, that doesn't look at larger infrastructural issues like Medicare for all or even public transportation, things that would actually materially improve the lot of people who are freelancers or people who are contractors, like actually getting national health care in place. We can never do that. We do a lot of cultural stuff on the liberal side. And people like working class Latinos and Hispanics, Asian Americans, two of the largest, most quickly growing constituents, they're peeling away from Democrats. So I'm just like, keep going, guys. Appeal to your, small liberal arts college seminar constituents and look at what's happening outside the window. But in my most conspiratorial moments, like I think this is what they want. They want a demobilization. They want disillusionment, the liberals. They want cynicism. And then it creates more reaction so they can create more outrage. The outrage feeds the machine. It feeds like the fundraising apparatuses, like Nancy Pelosi getting on, my text, getting my DMs going, we need $15 from you because Roe versus Wade has been overturned. And it just, in my most conspiratorial moments, I think it actually suits the PMC liberals to have this kind of fractured politics that ignores the material well-being of the majority of Americans.
Right. I mean, it's honestly, I'll never understand how people view this as, for me personally, I view when everybody rises up and everyone is on a good playing field, then everyone benefits. The idea that like if working people somehow get public transportation and free college or tuition free college, that somehow this threatens you will always astound me, because
it will threaten them, though, because if there's good and it should threaten them, if there's good public programs, well-funded public programs, well-funded federal public programs, like a really well-managed national healthcare system, then people will realize like how powerful collective ownership is of services, of the means of production, and it should scare them. But we're too disorganized to actually bring that about.
Right.
Like I keep thinking, like, if Medicare for all happens, then that's the first step towards socialization and nationalization of the economy. So the capitalist class, they know that. So they're never going to let that happen. So Americans will die of medical bankruptcy, and will die because they can't afford drugs. And this is in the most advanced, most prosperous country in the world. And this is the stark nature of what we're dealing with. Maybe things will get to a point where it's so bad that we'll have, this this coming to being of consciousness. But one of the things that I think that will happen is like the step-by-step, like Obamacare, incremental reformism still makes medical insurance really unaffordable for most Americans, right? So they'll just say like, oh yeah, look at that program that didn't work, that really sucks. So what, you're going to really love Blue Cross Blue Shield, or you really love Prudential? I mean, that's how they get you into thinking there is no alternative. It's also when they give you that student loan paper and you're like looking at, I can't pay $35,000 on top of their, $50,000 grant, but they're like, oh, you just sign on the dotted line. And you feel like, I got to do it. There's no alternative. So you just sign on the dotted line, and that you are now like, you've now sold your future to Citibank.
Right. You know what my problem is, Catherine? It's just that I just don't have the PMC mindset. I just don't aspire to power. All I need is a basic income level that gives me and my family and my kids the basic necessities to be happy and live. And I would like that for everybody. And that would make me very happy. That's all.
You're
That's
like
all
the
I
most
need.
dangerous person in America then.
I
According
guess.
to them, because it's always about aspiring. It's always about ambition. Yep.
Right. I mean, I think that's my problem. I can't get into that PMC mindset, so I just will never understand it. Catherine Liu, author of the book Virtue Hoarders, The Case Against the Professional Managerial Class, and professor of film and media studies at the University of California, Irvine. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks
This
so
was
much for having
fantastic.
me.
There was so much more too I wanted to get to that we didn't have time for. Where can people find you online, or anything else you'd like to any link or anything you'd like to drop? Please go ahead.
Okay. Oh, I'm at I tweet at bureaucrat Liu, but I'm tweeting less these days because Twitter is like a hellhole. But I'm working on another book, the follow-up book, which is about the weaponization of trauma in the age of neoliberalism and public austerity. The weaponization of private trauma in an age of public austerity.
Oh, I'm looking forward to reading that and talking to you again.
Yeah,
soon
gotta
about
work
it.
on that.
All right.
It's
Take
hard work.
care.
All right. Take care, Matt. Thanks
Have
so
a great
much.
day.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you. All right, folks, we are going to head into the second half of the show, the fun half of the show. But first, I was asked by Bradley to mention that there is a t-shirt sale on the Majority Report website, and it is still going on until this Sunday, the 21st of August at midnight. Go check that out. You can get your Majority Report with Sam Seder gear. I believe there is some Emma Majority Report gear as well. I guess after today, we're going to need to get onto doing some Matt Jardy shirts too, right, Matt Leck? I mean, with our faces on it, I feel like that should be something in the pipeline.
We should do that. I just don't want to do it too close to the leftreckoning.com/store release that is also ongoing.
See, this is my problem. I don't have any Doomed or Scam Economy merch to drop. I don't have anything to. I gotta.
You have two shows and you don't have merch for either. That's.
I just printed up Scam Economy stickers a couple months ago that I gave out, that I'm giving out for free. I still got to send a bunch of them. That's my mindset. That's why I could never be in the ownership class. I could never be a good PMC, because when I did print up merch, I gave it away for free.
Yeah. Well, also, like, I think, like, the real ownership and true, like, managerial PMC, like, they have the money to just spend on stuff like that. And whereas, like, when we do it, we have to be really concerned about, oh, crap, are we going to be screwed on taxes and international shipping and stuff? That's still very scary to, workers like us.
Right. So we're going to go into the fun half. But before we do that, let's bring, is Brandon on? He's on, right? Yeah, let's go, Brandon. How are you doing, buddy? Oh, wait, I can't hear him.
Ooh, we don't have your audio, Brandon. Are you muted? Let me see if I can unmute him.
Maybe Brandon, you just need to drop out really quick and then come back in. But while you do that, I will drop some plugs for my show. So, folks, if you liked my guest hosting duties here on the Majority Report, you might also like my two shows, Doomed with Matt Binder, which covers right-wing movements, reactionary movements, online right-wing conspiracy theories, extremist groups, disinformation, misinformation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's called Doomed with Matt Binder, and you can check it out at youtube.com/Matt Binder, and for the podcast version at doomedcast.com. This past Tuesday, I had on Lance from the Surfs. And basically, I was away last week for a little family trip upstate, not too far, but I was sort of off the grid after I accidentally dropped my phone into the bottom of a creek and was completely cut off from the world. So I had Lance on to update me on possibly the worst week I could have taken off, apparently. The week Trump was, quote unquote, raided by the FBI. So this past Tuesday's show was Lance catching me up on everything going on with Trump and the FBI, the Fox News media reactions to it. We also spoke about the Alex Jones Sandy Hook trial that wrapped up a week or two ago. And we also spoke about this whole anti-trans horribleness going on online, spearheaded by like libs of TikTok and Matt Walsh of the Daily Wire, going after a children's hospital, Boston Children's Hospital, in their anti-trans rages that they go on. Their followers are sending death threats and disrupting the daily proceedings of this hospital. It's horrible. So check that out, doomcast.com, youtube.com/Matt Binder. And then tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern time at the YouTube channel and at twitch.tv/Matt Binder, and later as a podcast at scameconomy.com is my crypto criticism show, Scam Economy. I speak with Ed Zitron about all of Coinbase's various controversies over the past couple of weeks. It's a really fun, entertaining episode if you're interested in the anti-crypto beat. Also, after this show, after the fun half is over around 3 p.m., I'm going to go live on my YouTube channel, encourage people who don't get their calls through on the majority port to jump over to youtube.com. Oh, perfect. We'll get...
You can hear me.
Oh,
sorry, I just interrupted all 18 shows right. You have to plug before.
No, it's all right. I usually would keep it short, but I'm hosting, so I'll take the extra time. So right after this show, youtube.com/Matt Binder, 3 p.m. I'm going to go live taking calls and everything for maybe an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. We'll see. So you're going to get, if you watch all Matt Binder today from 12 p.m. noon this show to tonight Scam Economy, and the post-show Scam Economy where I take calls as well, you're looking at like 8 hours of Matt Binder today. So youtube.com/Matt Binder. Yeah, there. Oh, and Brandon, why don't you go now? Go ahead. What's going on in the Discord?
I don't have a full day's work worth of content for people, but as we speak, the latest episode of Discourse is uploading to the Patreon. We talk about the FBI raid on Trump's winter White House. We talk about Alex Jones being hit with the in real life band hammer, aka court fines, and we also talk about the 2024 upcoming election and the lack of a Democratic Party bench.
There we go. Everyone should check out Brandon and the Discourse. Yep. Yeah. You guys should call it. Oh yeah. You got to come on Scam Economy eventually. I got to have you on soon. Maybe the week I'm going away again in this week. So maybe you could come on the week after and we could catch up on all the crypto stuff that's been going on.
I'm a cryptoholic. I mean, you probably shouldn't say that because that probably means something different that I don't know on the internet. So I'll just say I'm a crypto enthusiast, not a secret enthusiast of crypto. I'm very vocal about it, though. I've been reading about the Tornado Cash, debacle. So
yeah, let's do that. I'll hit you up later today, maybe tomorrow, and we'll get on that. But folks, we're gonna go to the fun half now. Stick around. Hope you enjoyed this episode of the Matt Jardy Report. The Matt Jardy Report continues, but with Let's Go Brandon as well.
Yeah.
See you on the fun half.
Let me just get a plug in real quick. Ben Burgess is going to be joining David and I for the patron show of Left Reckoning that comes out every Sunday. We're going to be talking about debunking the right wing. Also, I look forward to a conversation I'm going to have with Joshua Conn Russell about ayahuasca and how to all things ayahuasca spiritually, and also like the sort of tourism aspect of it. We're going to talk about all sorts of things like that. So Joshua Conn Russell, patreon.com/Left Reckoning to get that.
There you go. I took your shameless merch plug as the full Left Reckoning plug. I made that mistake. I'm sorry.
I should probably plug the content a little too.
I've been thinking about making. I've been thinking about making like Brandon shirts, but like they're just the market's flooded.
Right. Hell, while we're at it, if you're already supporting the Majority Report and you got a little bit of extra cash, and you're supporting Left Reckoning as well, I don't want to step on anyone's toes. Patreon.com/Matt Binder. If you got some more cash burning a hole in your pocket, I'm trying to grow the Patreon page, bring some people on board to expand the show. The shows patreon.com/mattbinder. And with all that said, let's go to the fun half.
3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now. And I don't think it's going to be the same as it looks like in 6 months from now. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better 6 months from now than it is 3 months from now. But I think around 18 months out, we're going to look back and go like, wow. What? What is that going on? It's nuts. Wait a second. Hold on for a second.
The Majority Report.
Emma, welcome to the program.
Hey.
Matt.
What is up, everyone?
Nomi Key.
You did it. Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Bradley, you want to say hello?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm just a random guy.
It's all the boys today.
Fundamentally false. No, I'm sorry. Women's.
Stop talking for a second and let me finish.
Where is this coming from, dude?
But dude, you want to smoke this 7A?
Yes.
Hi, me? This me?
Yes.
Is this me?
Is it me?
It is you.
Is this me? Hello, is this me?
I think it is you. Who is you? No sound. Every single freaking day. What's on your mind?
Sports. We can discuss free markets and we can discuss capitalism.
I'm gonna go start watching.
Libertarians.
They're so stupid, though.
Common sense says, of course.
Gobbledygook.
We fucking nailed him!
So what's 79 plus 21?
Challenge Matt.
I'm positively quivering.
I believe 96, I want to say.
857-210-35-501. 1/2. 3/8.
9/11, for instance.
$3,400, $1,900.
6, 5, 4, $3 trillion sold. It's a zero-sum game.
Actually, you're making me think less of it.
But let me say this. Poop.
Call it satire. Sam goes, it's satire.
On top of it all, my favorite part about you is just like every day, all day, like everything you do.
Without a doubt. Hey, buddy, we see you. All right, folks.
It's just the week being weeded out, obviously.
Yeah, sun's out, guns out. I don't know.
But you should know.
People just don't like to entertain ideas anymore.
I have a question. Who cares?
Our chat is enabled, folks.
I love it.
I do love that.
Look, gotta jump. Gotta be quick. I gotta jump.
I'm losing it, bro.
2 o'clock. We're already late, and the guy's being a dick. So screw him. Sent to a gulag?
Outrageous.
Like, what is wrong with you?
Love you, bye.
Love you. Bye-bye.
And we are back. There's Brandon. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the fun half. Let me make sure I can take calls. I forgot to, the phone system's on, but if I have to set up my computer to do that, it should be working now. Let me just, I forgot to dial into the call-in system myself. Give me a second to do that.
Tisk.
Tisk,
This is what
tisk.
happens when Emma's not here, you know.
Yeah, I really blew it. I really totally forgot all about logging into the actual phone system. I like, people can call in, but I can't. Oh boy, I forgot how to do that because it's been so long. Oh wait, here we go. I could call in. Oh boy, Matt, I'll do it while we play a clip. Why don't we do that? So let's go to the clips here.
Let's do this Dr. Oz thing, I think, just to kind of.
All right, yeah. So this doctor, all right, let's set it up here because everyone loves what's going on right now with, well, not everyone, because surely Dr. Oz doesn't love it, and his supporters probably don't if they exist or to the level they exist. But Dr. Oz is getting absolutely reamed all over the internet for his crudité video where he went to what did he call it again? A Wegner's, when it was really he made like an amalgamation of two classic PA grocery stores.
Right.
Like Wegmans and something else?
Yeah,
there's
Wegmans
another
and
one that I can't
Redner's.
remember what it is.
Redner's,
Wow.
I think.
Mm,
Yeah. So he called it Wegner's, and then he was picking up various veggies and getting the prices wrong on them because apparently he can't read and also doesn't know apparently how vegetables are priced. And he said his wife sent him to get some stuff for a crudité. And honestly, I had to look that word up because I am an unwashed mass among the
Same.
unwashed masses. So I
It's
had
the
no
plate
idea
of
what
like celery and carrots and shit.
But
it's a veggie
Brandon,
plate.
yeah, but Brandon, I'm just curious for you, like, because I know, like Bender just said, like, I never heard that word ever.
I literally just messed up. I know what a crudité platter is, and I've known for a while because I put together little like things at work, and I like to have little food for people. But I definitely at the live show called it a décolletage. So like I don't use the word very often.
Isn't décolletage like bust
I hope
or
it's nothing.
like bosom or something like that? I'm pretty sure it
Probably.
is.
Excuse moi, Brandon. I did not realize
I don't
you were-
appreciate the French language. I go out of my way not to speak it like Werner Herzog.
So he's got to make the right-wing media tour to explain what the hell went on with that video and him getting absolutely owned all over the internet for it. Obviously, John Fetterman's having a field day, and we got a few clips, right? So let's play.
I think let's start with the Fox News one before we get to Oz explaining himself to Newsmax, because I think this just kind of shows why he needs to do that.
All right, let's listen to that clip right now.
New Republican candidate Dr. Mehmet Oz has been taking hits for a video about shopping for groceries and the high price of crudité. His opponent, Democrat John Fetterman, quickly mocking Dr. Oz, saying it shows that he is just out of touch with ordinary Pennsylvanians. Have a look.
In PA, we call this a veggie tray. And if this looks anything other than a veggie tray to you, then I am not your candidate.
Brian Yennis live in our newsroom, having a little fun with each other, but this is a serious race up there in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Dana. It is a serious race. In a viral video, you see Dr. Oz. He's walking around a grocery store where he's talking about how inflation is really hitting Americans hard, and it's making things more expensive in grocery stores, especially that crudité.
Thought I'd do some grocery shopping. I'm at Wegner's, and my wife wants some vegetables for crudité. Guys, that's $20 for crudité, and this doesn't include the tequila.
Now, Fetterman attacked Dr. Oz on Twitter as being out of touch, noting most people in Pennsylvania call it a veggie tray, and the supermarket chain is called Wegmans, not Wegner's. And Fetterman raised over $500,000 in just 24 hours while giving out Wegner's Let Them Eat Crudité bumper stickers. Dr. Oz said, look, he was exhausted campaigning when he made the video in April, and sometimes he even gets his kids' names wrong. Then Fetterman attacked Dr. Oz for owning 10 properties with a photo of a Monopoly board with 10 homes on one space, tweeting, POV, you are Dr. Oz playing a board game. He then noted that Monopoly was invented in New Jersey, a swipe at Dr. Oz for having lived in Jersey for 3 decades. Now, Dr. Oz responded saying, I purchased my homes with my money. You lived off your parents until you were almost 50. Get off the couch, John.
I just love the fact that even Fox News is like, first John Fetterman called Dr. Oz a little bitch. Then he took him behind the school and gave him a wedgie, put him on the flagpole. And then while he was up there, everyone started shooting spitballs at him. They brought him back down, dumped him in the school dumpster, and they proceeded to take that dumpster, push it down the driveway. I mean, they just went on and on as if John Fetterman, like this cataloging the owns John Fetterman did to Dr. Oz. I mean, you would almost think Fox News really doesn't like Dr. Oz themselves.
Right. Like you could just ignore it entirely, but they do like a little highlight package like at the Sports Center, looking at all the John Fetterman dunks. And I forgot where my train of thought goes. You can go ahead, Brandon.
I would say I love the Monopoly thing. I think there's also a Pennsylvania Avenue in Monopoly. It might be one of like the green or orange pieces. He should have put the houses on there and swiped them off. That would have been a good move too. Otherwise no notes on that play. Yeah, no, I think it's hard when it's something like crudité. Obviously, you should know words, it's fine, doesn't matter. But like the kind of image the right wing has when it comes to being anti-intellectual, despite most of them having gone to Harvard, is very funny. And so, having to actively avoid using words that they know to prevent for themselves from alienating their view of the working class is hilarious.
Yeah, and also I just want to point out before we play Oz responding, like Fetterman has been a public servant and also like founded GED courses and has taught people through their GED courses. So like he has done I think quite enough for people, and that's not to even talk about the policy positions of the pro-capitalist Dr. Oz versus Fetterman, who actually wants to do stuff for the public.
I think that if you insist that politicians have to live in the areas that they serve, what's next? Will cops have to live in the areas that they serve? Will Mayor Eric Adams also have to move from New Jersey to New York City? Like, I guess he lives here now in the governor's or mayor's mansion, whatever. But still, obviously people should be allowed to live where they want, but still lord over the people that they want to lord over.
Right. It was amazing to watch. Let's continue that clip. Let's see what he has to say.
Well, so this is Dr. Oz on Newsmax.
Oh, okay.
With I forget what the guy's name. It's on the sound sheet, but it's funny. Something like Craze Man or something, which is, makes a lot of sense.
Let's talk crudité, if we can. As you know, this video went viral. You were at Wegmans going through the veggie aisle, essentially hitting on inflation and how things cost more. Putting together a plate of crudité would cost you more than $20. You said that you were at Wegner's. This is a very popular local grocery in this region called Wegmans. Your response to this, and not only the video that is making its round, Fetterman is campaigning off of it. He has raised quite a bit of money off of that video. But it does get to the factor, is Dr. Oz relatable to the everyday, hardworking American there in Pennsylvania?
Hold on, pause it for a second.
Listen, I rolled my sleeves up my whole life. I've taken care of patients, saved lives, invented the...
I just wanted to pause it for a second because, listen, Fox News doing that, what we just talked about before, running through the vast library of John Fetterman owns on Dr. Oz, that was shocking. For the Newsmax host to even do a version of that right in front of Dr. Oz as well is really stunning, because Newsmax wouldn't even dare. This is Donald Trump's guy. Remember, Donald Trump endorsed Dr. Oz. That's why Dr. Oz won the Republican primary to even be here in Pennsylvania. He wouldn't have won without Trump's endorsement. So here they are, even the Trump's guy going, hey, Dr. Oz, you recall how John Fetterman gave you that wedgie, put you on that flagpole, put you in the dumpster, and then threw you down the driveway? It was just, I just had to point that out. Newsmax, of all places. Wow.
No, I agree, but I think, important thing to consider is that the right wing has a very complex victimology. And so sometimes they don't necessarily understand like what things that they say how they're being victimized, rather, like, how they're being bullied are not going to resonate with people outside of that, like, bubble of like any attack on me is like a deep attack.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
they lack self-awareness.
It doesn't, it also like, Oz is running because he's a COVID minimizer, and like that doesn't have the same salience when basically the Biden administration has given all those people exactly what they want with regards to like meeting people, quote unquote, where they are with regards to COVID, even though 51% of people still wore masks in the past week. But yeah, here's a little bit more of how Oz decides to like give his normal I'm a relatable person bona fides. The things he lists are not exactly relatable here.
American there in Pennsylvania.
Listen, I rolled my sleeves up my whole life. I've taken care of patients, saved lives, invented devices. I've started foundations where we take care of tens of thousands of teens around the country, trying to help wherever I can. That's what my life's been about. When I joke about a crudité, which is a way of speaking about how ridiculous it is that you can't even put vegetables on a plate. In the middle of a campaign, you'll do what...
Look at this guy eating vegetables. What a loser.
He's acting like it was a joke that he said crudité. It was a way of speaking to say you couldn't even put vegetables on a plate. No,
what they're called, man.
You were calling it crudité.
Right, that's what he thought. Like everyone called a veggie plate. Like, or I don't know. I don't even know what he was thinking. I don't even know how you would go.
He
about
was just thinking like
deciding
Dr.
to say
Oz.
that.
Like, oh, like people usually have crudité at functions that I show up to. I guess I'm in charge of that this time, and I'm gonna go act like I could, pick that up for myself. But like, he wasn't saying like, oh, I'm gonna deploy this word crudité to like try to make some point about inflation making things expensive. No, that's your vocabulary. Just own it. This is more flim flam.
This is like his version of when Barack Obama put Dijon mustard on a hamburger and everyone like lost their minds. Next time he'll know better. Next time he'll just say he's going to the gas station to pick up a trough of ranch dressing and he's just going to leave it out in the field for his guests to, shove their heads into, like the way they want to be, the way they think that, the working class, quote unquote, wants to be pandered to.
Right. Yeah, we got more Dr. Oz, right? Let's play it.
Whatever we need to do to make sure that people of Pennsylvania respect what we're about and that we're going to work as hard as we can to fix their problems. It's what I've done my whole life. It's what I'll continue to do. I challenge my opponent. What have you done rolling your sleeves up in your own life to make life better for the people of Pennsylvania? And I think if the voters, when they do look at on November the 8th, they're going to ask one basic question. Are we happy with where the country's headed? And I think for most people, the answer is no, which is why I'm the choice. I'm the man for change. I'm the person who put us on the right track and address many of the challenges, cost of living, crime, and our schools that afflict so many Pennsylvanians.
And I mean to fixate on it, but I just, for those watching in Pennsylvania, you know how particular many people are about their groceries. What happened with Wegmans and Wegner's? Can you explain that to them?
Yeah, I was exhausted. When you're campaigning 18 hours a day, listen, I've gotten my kids' names wrong as well. I don't think that's a measure of someone's ability to lead the Commonwealth.
Very good.
I like how the guy was just like, the host was like, very good. Let's get past that. The idea that you would forget your kid's name and that's somehow relatable. How many Pennsylvanian parents are so exhausted they're forgetting their kids' names? I guess that's what his version of relatable is, because I guess he thinks that ordinary Pennsylvanians just aren't that caring for their children or that bright. I don't know. That's bizarre.
Yeah. I mean,
he only
even
knows
that...
what he's.
Go ahead, Brandon.
I would say I think from parenting, he only knows what he's seen on TV, and while he's not, I was gonna say while he's probably not the worst TV doctor, that's more of a condemnation of the other ones than like a big point in his favor. But like, yeah, I mean, he deals with a lot of those like troubled teens and that kind of work. I would imagine that he has a very, hard on teen, juvenile, acting out, just generally that view. So it's not surprising to me that he's not really like the most parental figure.
Right. I guess when you have 10 homes or whatever number of homes he has, and your
11 homes
might be,
but only 2 that he legitimately lives in, by which he means doesn't rent to other people. So he only owns, he owns 9 others, but he doesn't legitimately own those because other people are living in those and he's getting rental income from them.
Listen, look, when you own as many homes as Dr. Oz owns, it's hard to keep them all tracked, just like your kids. Like each home is like a child too.
Right.
I forget what my addresses are.
Who's among us doesn't have so many homes? We forget how many we exactly have.
I have so many homes. I can't remember what state I live in.
Do you guys think you could remember 11 addresses? Like that would be difficult.
I barely know my social security number, so probably not.
Right. I mean, maybe the problem is that, his children are spread out amongst all those homes. So he forgets where these children are. Maybe there's some maybe he's like, what's his face, Walker in Georgia, who isn't even sure how many he has because they could be some hiding in homes because he's got so many homes and then he doesn't know their names. I mean, we never know what's going on here. Let's go. I would say let's go to the phones, but I'm having trouble logging into the phones. Matt, would you be able to log into the phones?
Dr. Oz has shut us down.
I don't know if I can do that. I'm not sure. What the fans is letting you log in?
Yeah, it keeps. It says call ended the second I try to call in.
Oh, weird. I can try something in here, but I'm not sure.
It says fetching new token, and then, it literally just worked. So let's give it a try. Let's see if we got this going. Let's do this. I am going to pick up a phone and let's see. Hopefully this works. Let's just go with the first person who called in. Hopefully this works.
First person who called in wins like a Dr. Oz branded Garcinia Cambogia diet weight loss pills.
Right.
If I can't say that, that's probably
817. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Hello.
I feel like I hear something.
817. Oh, I don't know if it's gonna work, guys. Boy, let me maybe it's the phone. Let me try one more call. Let me try one more caller. Uh-oh. Womp womp.
I'm gonna step away and just try to turn on this other computer, see if we can maybe get through that way, but I'm not, no promises.
818, what's your name? Where are you calling from? Let me see if there's something on my end too. Let's see. Let's try.
Well, now I can't hear Matt, but that might just be me.
Oh yeah, Binder, we just lost your audio.
All right, I'm back. I tried something on my end. We might not be able to take calls today. Oh well. Oh boy.
Well, I have a question though that can be like framed as a caller. Do you think Papa John will ever run for office in this country? Because I think he will.
Do you have a guess as to which office? I don't even know where Papa John's resides. He's in California, I guess, right?
I mean, shit, I'm sure he has at least 10, 11 properties, even if he only lives in 2 of them. So he could just pick a state. What state is most open to pizza?
Oh, yeah, he lives in a wealthy suburb of Louisville, Kentucky.
Oh, yeah. Kentucky made Kane mayor or county executive or something, right? So, I mean, it's just this Kane from wrestling Kane, Undertaker's brother.
I thought you were talking about Tim Kane. Like, I think he's...
No, I think he's still like left in Virginia.
Are you still there with us, Binder?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just trying something to see what works. How's my mic? I think my mic changed. Do you hear me now? Do you still hear me?
Yeah, you sound fine.
Oh no, wait, I don't hear you anymore. I'm messing things up on my end.
Test 1 2. Is that can you hear us now, Matt?
Stop fooling around. I'm gonna stop fooling around with it because I think I'm just gonna mess up what we can do. Yeah, all right. So let's
we got this Matt Gaetz ad.
Let's
That's
go
pretty
to
funny.
Yeah, let's do the Matt Gaetz ad. Yeah. Are you still trying to put up by the way, the phone on the other computer, or are we giving up on it?
I think we should give up on it. I don't think it's gonna work.
All right.
Our haters have won for one more day.
Yeah. All right, so let's get to this Matt Gaetz ad. Oh, I haven't even seen this ad. Let's just play it. Matt Gaetz, there's an ad. I'm guessing it's a attack ad on Matt Gaetz. Is that what this is?
Exactly, precisely. He's got a challenger, I guess. I think I wrote his name down like Lombardo or something like that. We'll get to it, but Mark Lombardo.
All right, so let's listen to this ad right now.
When Donald Trump really endorses someone, he goes big. You've seen none of that for Lion Matt Gaetz. What does Trump know? Is Gaetz the informant? Gaetz hired Jeffrey Epstein's attorney. Another Epstein attorney approved the raid on Trump's house. Remember, Gaetz pressured Trump to give him a pardon, but Trump said no. Matt Gaetz puts himself first, ahead of Trump and ahead of you. Vote for a leader who will put America first. Vote for Marine Mark Lombardo.
I'm Mark Lombardo. I approve this message.
When Donald Trump really endorsed.
Devastating. It could have been worse. I would have gone with, I'm Mark Lombardo. I'm not, under investigation for child trafficking. But his way is, send a Marine is a good tagline too, I guess.
Right. I mean, usually I'd want a little bit about the other candidate. I'd like to hear a little bit about Mark Lombardo, what he stands for. But clearly he stands for wrecking Matt Gaetz. I mean, damn, that was
Lion Matt Gaetz.
I mean, it's weird that Trump hired Alex Acosta, the guy who let Epstein off with like a very easy deal, is my understanding, that he could basically like waltz out of prison, have like, field trips and stuff like that. Trump hired him as labor secretary. So I don't understand this way that Trump's on top of being like in pictures with Jeffrey Epstein, like checking out women or videos, right? Like we've all seen those clips of like them in some fancy ballroom pointing at people. It's bizarre how they've sort of tried to be the anti-Epstein folks, when of course, like, no, this is their class of people. And Matt Gaetz, as a political part of a descendant of a political dynasty, like, of course he's sus about it.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can't, claim to be principled against standing against the things that Matt Gaetz stands for, but also be referencing Trump like, you look up to him, because like Trump is anything Matt Gaetz has done, Trump has definitely probably also done, and worse, obviously. So obviously, Republicans are sycophants. Trump is still an easy way to get a lot of votes to excite the base, to raise money. And so a lot of these races just boil down to like which one Trump has given the thumbs up to, which one Trump has given the thumbs down to. If his name was Matt too, they could have just hashed it out that way. But obviously, in this case, Trump might have to choose. But he's probably hoping that Matt Gaetz, Vice President or ex-Vice President Pence's guy, said that Matt Gaetz doesn't make it to the election, or at least doesn't spend the entire time in office.
I mean, that would be quite a way to. I mean, if you're in Matt Gaetz's district, like, I'm surprised there's not a whole field of people running against Matt Gaetz, because if that's the play there, I mean, and the odds seem like they're not nil that could happen. I mean, you have an open seat right there, and this guy, what's his name again? Lombardo?
Mark Lombardo.
Mark Lombardo. He's going to be front and center, ready to take over for Matt Gaetz, or at least challenge whoever the Republicans put forward.
It's a good play. Be there when the hammer comes down. If it comes down, it might not. Our laws aren't actively enforced, equally across populations for various reasons. But, you can be there when like the FBI like frog marches Matt Gaetz out.
Yeah,
I vote for Vince Lombardo or whatever.
Right. I mean, listen, I don't know what's going to happen to Matt Gaetz, but I certainly think that something, the thing people imagine happening to Trump. Well, you know what? This would have worked better before the FBI stuff. I was going to say the thing that people imagine happening to Trump, him walking out in cuffs, it's actually much more likely to happen in this scenario. But now I don't know anymore. Who knows? But Gaetz is, I don't know what's taken so long to look into this Gaetz stuff, but I look forward to whatever happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are still making deals. I think I read recently that his lawyer or his the tax county, the guy who was basically colluding with him, like recently is signing a deal. So it could just be, collecting that information.
There's some weird stuff in that case about people being told to like send their expired licenses certain places, and then those licenses being possibly used in like a fake license creation scheme, like some really like crime. I guess is what I'm.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen Taken. That sounds like human trafficking.
It sounds certainly worrying. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Unless they're just trying to make fake IDs for college students to buy beer with.
A lot of money in that,
yeah, there's a lot of money in that, and I guess we can't, I wouldn't say it's the world's worst way to make money, but certainly it raises some alarms.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right, let's, what else we got here? Let's go to the next clip. I'm getting a text saying to pick up a call that we need to pick up, but we can't get into the call-in system.
Is it Emma? Is she calling in from afar to tell us how bad we're doing?
I wish. I mean, I wish it was. I don't know what's wrong with the. What's going on with the calls? I really don't get why it's not working.
Yeah, I'll try again in here. But do we have any IMs? Can we do IMs in the meantime, or? Oh, we just lost you again, Binder.
They muted Matt again.
So, nope, you're still gone. If we need to, maybe we take a little break here. Oh, there we go. Now you're back. Nope, you're not back. Sorry.
Well, I mean, I would just say about the Matt Gaetz thing quickly while we don't have Matt Bender able to speak, that I don't know how quick an investigation does move. Obviously, there's more to consider when someone is a public figure, whether or not any real charges ever come down. I will say it's, obviously as the party of law and order, you would think there would be more to do within the party about even the, accusation of malfeasance of this type. But in reality, I think a lot of people who operate on the online, the right wing and the online sphere like to pretend like all accountability is the same, like everything that comes out against them is just like, oh, that's just my haters online saying, saying mean things about me, when it's like not a legitimate like formal investigation into me. So, it's kind of hard to gauge how far things go when you're like just taking their word for it. And you just see them like out with Marjorie Taylor Greene and like pizzerias giving talks every week.
Right.
Do you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right, so let's I'll read some IMs. You want to see if you get the phones working on the other computer while I read the IMs, Matt? You
Yep, I'm gonna give it a shot. Yep.
All right, cool. Here we go. All right, let's read some IMs. Let's go down and see. We got Adam Ant Lefty says Matt is a binder full of facts, not to be confused with a binder full of whoops, the other way around. Matt is a binder full of facts, not to be confused with a binder full of women. We got who's laughing now? It's the Matt Jardy report time. Jess from the West. Hi all. It was during the first year of the pandemic where I came to realize how vital our public schools were to children. They are a resource for food, healthcare, mental health, social interaction, education, and overall stability. For some students, school is the safest place they can be. My district, with many others across the nation, provided bagged meals to get students through several days during remote learning. This highlights how reliant many people are on the education system for much more than education. Two questions that I feel are fair to come to mind. Number one, is this the role the education system should play in our country?
Oh, did we just lose Bender too
Oh,
now?
I thought that was me. Wow. So I guess
it's
the two
just-
question.
Education system is. I mean,
there we go.
I saw lines during the pandemic outside of the public schools. People.
Yeah, Bender, you're a little bit choppy, unfortunately, actually. Yeah, let's see. I'm not sure what you guys are talking about.
Well, I know the first question they were saying the IM what. Oh wait, Bender's back.
Are you there, Matt? Can you hear us?
Oh, you couldn't hear me?
You
you're
dropped
cutting
out
out.
twice, but you're back now. Yeah, still dropping out. So maybe you want to take it, Brandon. I'm gonna mute.
Well,
him.
yeah, and I was just gonna say the question that I got from the snippets that Matt was able to read before he got cut off was in relation to the idea that we use public schools and communities use public schools for more than just public schooling. Oh, you're back, Matt.
I'm not even changing anything now.
Are you losing us or are we
No,
just losing
everything
you?
sounds fine. You're just losing me.
Oh yeah, I mean,
I'm
you
gonna
seem-
log out and log back in.
Cool.
Well, yeah. So the question was, since we use public schools for more than just public schooling, people rely on them for childcare, they rely on them for meals, they rely on them for social interactions. There were two questions related to that. The first was whether or not schools should be used for those purposes. I don't know what the second question was because Matt wasn't able to read it. In my opinion, whether or not schools should be used for as sort of like a catch-all for all things that families need in relation to their child is both a practical one and an ideological one. Like, before I even answer it, though, I would say either way, they're not funded enough to make that reasonable. Certainly, teachers aren't paid enough to not just only teach, but also be, babysitters and therapists and, like family counselors. And if we want them to, play that role, we should provide them better funding and better materials. But the question itself gets to the heart of why school reform in this country, as opposed to education reform, is often misguided because it treats schools like all they are is a place for like rote learning of subject matter and not sort of this community center / like resource provider for a large number of underserved families. And so from my perspective, like, yeah, we should definitely fund schools more. We should understand that practically it's always going to make sense to centralize certain resources for children within a public school and for families within a public school, and maybe just for communities within public school, because they, like post offices, exist in neighborhoods as a, you know, a byproduct of having a neighborhood. We need to fund them more. And also when we talk about reforming schools, we need to understand that that's also going to be the need to reform the entire neighborhood, provide like a bucket of social solutions that target not just school itself, like the infrastructure and the books, et cetera, but the fact that, yeah, the community also might need food. The community also might need a jobs program so that parents and, you know, can be educated and parents can understand what it takes to raise a kid in this environment, et cetera. So, you know, I think it's a interesting question, but certainly we're not providing them the resources to even do the bare minimum of what we expect from them, which is teach children how to be, I guess, good adults, or teach them math if that's what you think schools are for. But certainly I think that in the history of this country, the role of public schools, at least by the founding fathers, when they were, you know, discussing what role public schools would serve, they understood that it was for more than just like learning a rote subject matter. It was for the reproduction of a healthy and successful populace. Of people who can critically consider what's going on around them in the needs of people other than themselves. I'm by here. Hey, Matt.
You're still here, yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Thanks for...
You guys hear me now?
No, I just wanted to make...
Yes, we can hear you now.
I can hear you now.
I don't know what's going on. You know, it's funny because the first half worked out perfectly, and then I tried to mess around with the phone systems, and look how that worked out. But it looks like you have it up on your end now, Matt, the phones, right?
Yeah, are you able to add people into the call?
I can. Let's take a call now and make sure this works. Let's go to 847. You have the audio up on that computer that's called in. That should work there. Let's try this out. 847. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you all hear him?
We can.
Yes.
Perfect. We've solved the problem. Okay. We've solved it. There we go.
Mission accomplished.
What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Thanks. It's Phil from Chicago suburbs. Thanks for everything. I have 1 to 2 questions about Ukraine, and they're kind of narrow. So, you know, if you don't know or something, just I invite you to expand on it and ask the chat the same question and all that stuff. So the first one is, so I saw some articles, a lot of articles a couple months ago about how I think the African Union, you know, and a bunch of other humanitarian groups were asking for a carve out from the SWIFT sanctions, similar to what Europe has for gas. I could be messing up the details, but, you know, there's like a million things causing food crises right now, and that apparently is one of them. Has there been any progress on that? Has anything happened? I have trouble Googling it because I get distracted by the Ukraine-Russia grain export deal.
I don't know. Do you guys have any idea?
I don't know if
that's all I
has,
heard about either. Go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna say haven't heard any news regarding any sort of new exceptions made for other countries. But I mean, I think that just creates a problem, like you said, for countries that are developing, for countries that have relations with Russia already, and all it does is create an opening. You know, it might seem like America's doing, you know, good work or like taking a stand and like providing sanctions, but I think it creates an opening, not that I care particularly, for China and Russia and India and other countries who exist in the eastern in the eastern world to create their own banking system, which will incorporate the global south and will eventually just compete and probably outcompete with the United States. And so like, and from a long-term like strategic standpoint, it doesn't make sense to not make these carve outs for other countries, because ultimately it's just going to force them to engage in more direct trade with Russia and China, if that's something that you care about.
Yeah, I mean, you know, personally, I'm in favor of pretty strict sanctions, but I know this was discussed at some point, I think also on This Is Revolution. I think they had some people on briefly talking about it. Not the solution, but just the problem.
You're right. All right, thanks for the call.
Do you have time for one more or no?
Yeah, sure. Really quick, go ahead.
Okay. So, you know, there's a lot of discourse on like what Ukraine should offer in a peace deal, what the United States should do to try to bring that about, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, when I try to evaluate how good of a job is Ukraine doing, how good of a job is the United States doing, it seems like it's really hard for me to do, because you would think that a lot of this diplomatic stuff happens totally behind the scenes without our knowledge, right? So they could look really aggressive, but maybe they're really not, or they could look, like they're really willing to try to meet Russia halfway or whatever, but they're really not. Can you comment on like how I should evaluate that, knowing that diplomacy happens in secret? And I'll hang up. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just go first on that. Like, I see things like Ukraine wants to retake Crimea, and like, with regards to like desires like that, I feel like hopefully that's just a bargaining position, because I don't know, and this is based on a vague sense of how the war is going and how important, like, say, our backing up Ukraine is to them continuing this. But like, I personally, like, I don't like how how quick people are to jump on folks like Chomsky or whoever who say like the position has to be we got to negotiate an end to this because that's the way wars end. It's not like they end with negotiations. And I understand frustration from folks who say like, well, Russia started this war and they are the main bad actor here. And I agree with that. Like, I think the invasion was heinous, but I also think like diplomacy is something that has to figure into these conversations, and it always has. Like, there was a time like the Spanish people fighting against Franco in the Spanish Civil War couldn't be more ideologically like I think relatable or sympathetic, and at a certain point it was still, even in that situation, like, how many people are going to die for a cause that you can't actually win militarily? And again, like, this is all based on not like fog of war and not knowing exactly how the conflict is playing out. But I think like room has to be made for those sorts of considerations.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I would say, based on what we know to be true about the United States of America and their role in perpetuating geopolitical conflicts, even when they're not the primary aggressor, I don't think it's unreasonable to assume that the United States is not doing everything that it could, regardless of pretenses, to negotiate for a peaceful end to this conflict. Now, what constitutes a peaceful and agreeable end to this conflict that both Ukraine and Russia can agree to? I would say it's not for me to say because I don't live in either Ukraine or Russia, so I can't say that one country should cede people, should cede like land to another country. What I will say is that it doesn't really change what we should be doing on our end, which is to be aggressively pushing for the negotiation for peace, because like this just simply has to be the case that the United States is not doing everything that it could be to so we know they're selling weapons, we know that they're supplying munitions, we know that they're even if they ostensibly are trying to negotiate on the front end, that they're not, that they've been our political leaders have been very clear that they see an opportunity in the prolonging of a conflict between Russia and Ukraine. And so even if we did feel that they were doing something to end it, we should definitely still be doing the same thing, which is pressuring our politicians and each other to call for an end to the war through peaceful negotiations. So whether or not you have the right amount of information or like verifiable information, I don't think changes what you as a person should be doing, which is like advocating for a peaceful end or a negotiations of peace.
Right. Yeah. It's difficult, this one, because I don't know how at least again, it's probably changed since or may have changed somewhat throughout. I mean, we're now many more months into this Russia's war in Ukraine, but at least from the offset, and at least like a month or two into it, Ukraine didn't seem like they wanted to reach a negotiation table that would do anything that would stop the war on Russia's end, and rightfully so. I mean, they're the ones being invaded. They should have some sort of autonomy to do that. So I don't know how far the gap is between where Ukraine and America and the U.S. would be, honestly, in ending this war. But for sure, I do agree that the U.S. probably has not made it easy in terms of trying to push Ukraine to end it, or to cede some things to Russia to end it. And I also I feel like I'm saying this as if Ukraine has the authority to end this war. I mean, this is of course also mainly, I would say, on Russia's end. I mean, they not going to make it easy for this war to end, obviously, because they're the ones who started it. They're the ones who set the terms of what they wanted.
Yeah, I mean, I think that also speaks to, again, less of a short-term goal with an end to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, but more to a long-term goal of actually establishing an international body where there's teeth and there's actual peaceful negotiation happening, and not just having like a UN and a series of trade deals between, between rivals that is supposed to ensure peace. Because ultimately, yeah, like it's difficult to solve this problem that we're in right now, the problem of Russia invading Ukraine, not just solve it, but to talk about it without talking about the long history of antagonism between the West and Russia, between the West and China, between, like the history of Ukraine and Russia. And that's all well and good, but it doesn't, but that's still very short-sighted in the sense that if we had been working 30, 40, 20, 10 years before this, we might have better tools. And so we should be already developing those tools for a future thing. Same with the pandemic, right? But I think, people get a little bit like hyper focused on, okay, there's a conflict now. How do we stop this conflict right now? And I mean, with the tools we have right now, and there's just, not much we can do quickly to solve it with the tools we have right now. But what we can do is see that we can't solve the situation and build those tools, build those relationships internationally to better be able to solve them in the future. We're not doing that either. So,
Right.
it's not worth mentioning.
Right. All right, let's go back to the phones. 457, what's your name? Where are you calling from? Hello.
Hi, Matt. Hey, I'm Mark Root. This is Rin from the Deep State. I wanted to call in. Y'all did a story the other day talking about the whole thing with the Mar-a-Lago raid and, the excuse they're trying to use now about how, Trump just declassified all of that information. And I was hoping to talk to y'all about why that's probably not as accurate as they might be hoping it is.
All right, sure. Yeah, please go ahead.
So a big part of this is going to have to deal with Executive Order 13526, which deals with how the government, classifies. It's essentially the rules and regulations for how the government classifies information. And to an extent, it is correct that the president, all classification authority is derived from the president, right? So while Trump was president, yes, he absolutely had the magic ability to wave his hand and say, I can bless this information and it is now declassified. And that is the entire process for the president and the president alone. The problem is that that's not the end of the story. Because Trump isn't the president anymore, and information can be, even after information has been declassified, which it theoretically would have been, with a major caveat there, even if he declassified it, that information can still be reclassified later. And this is covered under, if you read, and anyone reading, listening at home can look up Executive Order 13526, Section 1.7. It covers, all the rules for how information can be reclassified. And since there's a new president in town, it is just as easy to say, yeah, all of that information that was declassified, that was reclassified. And if it's still being held outside of a, compartment in space where you're not authorized to keep classified information, yeah, there were some serious violations happening. But beyond that, there's one more issue with all of this, and that's the type of information that they're talking about that the FBI was going in there to recover in the first place. I think we all understand now that, there was they're looking for information dealing with nuclear secrets. And when you get into nuclear secrets, that's not just covered by Executive Order 13526. Now we're getting into stuff with the Atomic Energy Act. And yeah, I don't know if y'all will get the same amount of humor that I did out of this, but the Atomic Energy Act, basically, that's the rules for dealing with nuclear secrets, because those are controlled separately. It's all dealt with, the Department of Energy. Everybody thinks back to, when Mitt Romney became the Secretary of Energy, and he was like, oh gosh, now I know what the Department of Energy does.
Right. No, it was Rick Perry, I think. That's who became the right.
Rick Perry. Sorry, I'm. This is the first time I've actually gotten through on a call with y'all, and I'm.
No, it's all good. You got your 2012 primary candidates mixed up.
Yeah. Rick Perry. So the thing about that is, we've all heard of QAnon. We're all familiar with QAnon. The thing is that that's actually, so DOE.
It's Q classification, right? That's Q. That's where it comes
We're literally
from.
getting into Q classified information.
Yes.
Because it's separate from confidential, secret, top secret. Nuclear secrets are Q. That's restricted data. That's all. They all have completely different handling. So it just seems really funny, the idea that Trump might get taken down by literally Q.
Right. I mean, it's I didn't get a chance to bring this up on my episode when I talked of Doomed, my show on Tuesday, because I was out of the loop and was just getting all this information. But I later did come across what you just told us about the Q classification, and I was looking into it, and this has been red meat for the conspiratorial right, because on top of everything you said, we can talk about how all of Trump's various trying to mishmash why he shouldn't get in trouble, because he should have the authority to declassify it. Well, guess what? You didn't. Well, I'm declassifying it now. Well, you're not the president now. Former presidents can't declassify stuff. Well, and then on top of all that, you can't do it by yourself with this specific material. Everything you just said, absolutely. But then this Q classification thing comes up, and it's like, oh my God. It's because that's what QAnon, that's what made the QAnon believers think that Q, whoever that Q was, whether it's what's his face from 8 Coon
Ron
or
Watkins.
not. Ron Watkins. Yes, thank you. Temporary mental block. The whole idea behind the original Q was that this was someone within Trump's orbit who had Q clearance. That's why they were calling themselves Q, that they were at the upper echelons of classified material in the US, that they were that high of authority, and that's why it was so crazy. This person was giving the QAnon faithful, the Anons, this information. Like, who else would know that Trump's DOJ was eminently going to mass arrest Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? No one but someone with Q clearance, right? I mean, that was the assumption to them. Oh, if someone that high knows this, then it's got to be true.
That was the assumption, and it's something that's driven me crazy, because I've known this for years. But it's literally, it's just a Department of Energy thing. It's just a Department of Energy access authorization. It has nothing to do with everything that the QAnon conspiracy has been all about. It is literally to do with possibly the type of information that was being kept down in Florida, though.
Right.
That's what they want you to think. It's really DARPA. It's always DARPA.
You can literally look this up on the Department of Energy website. This stuff is public.
I bet you can.
Not
the best place to hide a secret? In public. That's what they don't want you to know. Who's they? Whoever you want, man.
Right.
Also,
thanks for the. Go ahead. Go ahead. I was just about to say thanks for the call, but if you have something else, please.
Yeah, I was going to say for anyone who wants more information about this, there was a really good article put out by the New York Times and by the Atlantic, which basically are comprehensive about all the same things that I was just talking about. But yeah, that's all I have. Thanks for taking my call, guys.
Oh no, thank you for calling in. Absolutely,
thanks for the call.
Great call. Yep. Take care.
Yeah, great call and great point. I think, we were joking about Trump going to jail earlier, being marched out in handcuffs. But the unfortunate truth about Trump going to jail, regardless of whether or not you want to see that happen, is that whether or not he goes to jail or is even indicted on this crime or sees a courtroom is not really related to whether or not he broke the law or not. And it's not even really related to whether or not he is smart enough to come up with a good excuse for why he didn't break the law. It is entirely related to whether or not prosecuting him, same with Matt Gaetz, will in some way make it more likely that they will prosecute people who, the Congress and Senate don't want prosecuted. Like if there's like a 1% likelihood that like prosecuting Trump will lead to like Nancy Pelosi being, you know, brought up in front of ethics charges or whatever for like her insider trading, or, you know, Hillary Clinton being brought back in about Benghazi or her emails, they won't do it. You know, it could even be something as simple as they do, and then like Biden just pardons him and he just goes back to Mar-a-Lago like nothing happened. But, you know, the reality is Trump has been allowed to be a menace on our society since he was in real estate in the 80s, and he's gotten away with it less because of how smart he is and just more about like what it would mean and who it would implicate to take him down. Like, and it's just money protecting money, power protecting power, and it's been the same since he's been president. And whether or not they charge him is going to be entirely related to whether or not they can like extricate him from the larger power system that he sometimes represents, sometimes doesn't.
Right. Let's go to this clip. I want to play this clip. It's number 7 on the sound sheet because you know, we're seeing really this attack against trans people, and we are seeing an attack against LGBTQ educators really ramp up, and we are seeing this attack expand past even just the educators, the teachers who dare to teach like gender to children. We are seeing this now completely move beyond that into, I mentioned earlier at the top of this show, there is currently a literally hate campaign with death threats being sent to the Boston Children's Hospital. And last I checked, apparently the Department of Justice up there is like the prosecutors up there are looking into this. This is now well beyond just like internet threats. This is serious shit, because literally the Boston Children's Hospital put out a statement saying that specific doctors are being threatened, and you know, they're finding phone numbers, and there are all sorts of hate and all this stuff coming at individuals who work for this hospital, who literally take care of kids. It's the Children's Hospital, for God's sakes. And then today I see that libs of TikTok and Matt Walsh and all these people who foment this hate campaign are now expanding who they're going after. There's different children's hospitals they're now going after that isn't just the Boston Children's Hospital. So this is going to continue, obviously. And I think it's important to note that this isn't like just happening within like the conservative online vacuum. This is really getting really bad. And I think this clip from, who is this again, Matt? This is the Missouri GOP. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, Rowden, the Missouri GOP Senate Majority Leader. I forget what his Caleb Rowden. Caleb Rowden is his name.
Yeah, let's listen to him and what he has to say about what their priorities are.
And just some extra context right before I play this, Lauren Burkhart said this. Missouri has a bunch of schools that have dropped down to 4 days a week because they don't have enough teachers. Dropped bus services, Medicaid wait times are astronomical, bridges are crumbling, poverty is in abundance, and this is the priorities for the Senate in Missouri.
So let me ask you this. You said a productive session for the future kids. What does a productive session look like?
Well, I think it's coming in and starting early, you know, getting our feet under us early. I think we're going to do some big stuff. We had some stuff outlying at the end of last year that we wanted to get done that we couldn't. The map clearly just took up a bunch of bandwidth last year. You know, we're going to deal with curriculum accountability and CRT. We're going to deal with the transgender issue. Those are two issues that we know that 60-70% of Missourians agree with us on. That's just the way that it is.
I mean, this is literally the priorities. This is what they're going to focus on. Also, I like how he said the trans issue. How is it an issue? Who is it an issue for? Who is it an issue for? Like trans people who are seeking transgender healthcare?
Yeah,
that's who it's an issue for.
Honestly, like it's a little bit inflammatory, but they say the trans issue the same way Nazis said the Jewish question.
That is absolutely perfect. It really is. It really is just like that. I mean,
you know, it absolutely is.
Yeah,
because that's what they're, you know, but that's been their goal for decades. You know, honestly, I think, you know, you said at the top of this, and it's true that there's been obvious escalation in the amount of legislation being pushed that is actively making it more or less illegal to be trans. But for decades we've had people on the ground, activists in these communities, telling us how bad it's been, and there's been a concerted effort, not necessarily amongst leftist media obviously, but amongst the larger media sphere and amongst people who don't necessarily exist in those locations, to pretend as though we've been moving in the right direction because a handful of cities that they are occupying this country will have a pride parade that isn't like firebombed now. And it's just not the case that as a country we've been moving in the right direction when it comes to the rights and protecting the rights of marginalized people, especially the LGBTQ community, especially trans people. And so I think it's a cautionary tale. Like, we're now fighting a battle that a lot of people, or maybe not everybody, but certainly some people thought we had already solved, not just not just the rights of trans people to transition, but also Roe v. Wade. And it should be a cautionary tale moving to the future about like letting yourself be convinced by Democrats that just because the problem is out of sight for you, that it's eventually just going to become extinct because people are just naturally getting better. The more you see representation on television and Marvel movies, the more it's going to reflect in your real life. And that's just not like, it just doesn't map that way. It's not what we've seen. And so I would just say that this is a good example of why you can't necessarily look to the social diversity of a very specific hierarchy of people as a general like example of how as a society we've become more egalitarian.
Right. And of course they throw in CRT there. I mean, weird because I think CRT is sort of falling out of favor in terms of right-wing issues to focus on because they're having so much fun attacking trans people that they're focusing all their energy on that.
Yeah, but I mean, both issues really aimed at particularly teachers' unions, and like the don't say gay stuff. Like, you have to move down to 4 days a week for school because you don't have enough teachers, and now you're talking about CRT as the problem with your curriculum. I mean, this is. I mean, it's like it's a fascist attack on our country's intellectual development, and it's super despicable because. And the other thing is. They do the CRT stuff. I listened to Stitt, the guy from Oklahoma, on Dave Rubin's show the other day, and they talk about how it's actually this is all trying to unstick something they don't like being stuck, which is that people in rural communities like their public schools because they understand that that's the only way that they have an institution like that in rural areas because the private market is not going to provide for schools in small towns. And so these are all these sort of issues, the CRT and the groomer stuff, is meant to try to attack the perception of public schools, particularly for those folks, so they can go privatize it.
Right.
No, absolutely. And schools had already, especially the teachers union, had already been villainized during the pandemic for being one of the sole like voices of rationality when it came to forcing children back into underventilated schools. And so a lot of the suburban class of voters, a lot of the Democratic Party also viewed the teacher union in a new light of being, not that they needed a lot of help because the idea of unions had already been being villainized in our society. But with the pandemic and teachers standing in stark, at least in their heads, opposition to like what parents want and getting kids back to school, a lot of people found themselves even more amenable to arguments about like teachers unions being too powerful than they were before the pandemic, i.e. the Chicago teachers union going on strike and people, commenting on it like assholes.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't like understand.
They're letting veterans teach in Florida now.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that. That was an open call from DeSantis himself to do that. I really don't understand what it's going to take for Democrats and liberals and really the any sort of body agency that can do something about this to do something. This is getting beyond the pale. This is no longer just words. This is an attack on people's human rights. I mean, I just can't get over what we're seeing right now with the anti-trans hatred, and obviously this goes after teachers too. But I mean, it's just I can't get over what we're seeing with the children's hospital stuff. It's just I don't know what to say. Like, I'm at a loss for words. Really, I can't believe this is where we are.
I mean, I think I can believe it's where we are, but I do think it's going to, one thing I see happening in the short-term future, not to make predictions, is a lot more Alex Jones-esque lawsuits by people who can afford to, actually file these lawsuits, like the Boston Children's Hospital against, people who are stoking stochastic terrorism online, where previously people were not taking that step. I think, a lot of victims are going to be emboldened by seeing, ruling in the favor of the plaintiff, as opposed to like just some sort of blind free speech absolutist argument taking place in the courtroom, where there are some cut and dry cases of just like, you're stoking stochastic terrorism, you're clearly trying to incite violence against an organization or an individual, and obviously the law has not been very aggressive in preventing that when it's when it's right-wing violence against left-wingers or against marginalized groups. But that doesn't necessarily preclude people from getting like taken into court on civil charges.
Right. Yeah, hopefully, but unfortunately, I think how many of them are as wealthy as Alex Jones? Like, I don't know how much Libs of TikTok is making.
No, but I would encourage any social media platform to remove people like that and Matt Walsh from their platform.
Yes, that's the least they can do. Yes,
the idea that that's going to be the history of these social media platforms if they just allow this, and all this sort of fluff about, oh, what about free speech, slippery slope shit. Nah, you're going to be hosting the cultivation of hate on a mass scale that is, almost unprecedented you have to go back to like the 30s and stuff like that to talk about the way this technology is being deployed.
But you know what? That slippery slope thing is bullshit, because clearly there's something different that Libs. Let's even talk about this specifically, this very specific instance of how this is playing out with like Libs of TikTok and like Matt Walsh and these anti-trans accounts online. Like, there have been cringe accounts for years now that steal that rip stuff from like TikTok or Tumblr and mock the people in those videos, like social justice warriors and stuff. And the mockery happens online. They make fun of the person. Maybe the person will get some like replies, public replies on their platform, but that's as far as it goes. And the cringe account moves on to the next person to just laugh at. This is obviously something more with an account like Libs of TikTok, when every time this account decides to focus on somebody, this person is tormented, harassed, has to move from their home, loses their job. When their lives are upheaved, there's clearly something different here, because this account isn't just like, and the right loves to do this to defend Libs of TikTok. Higher Right Chick is her name. They love to say, oh, she just reposts what other people post. No, I just said cringe accounts have done that for years without any real, blowback like we've seen. She explicitly puts out calls to action to her followers to do something about this. And it's not just, haha, look at this liberal idiot or SJ Dub. It is, this person is a demon, satanic, and they'll do this to your children too. We must do something about this. There is a clear difference between the two things. And if Facebook and Twitter and TikTok and whoever else is involved with giving, Substack is a big one right now, where Libs of TikTok runs to do her more incendiary stuff because she knows they'll give cover to her. If these platforms are happy to have this sort of material on their website, they should know exactly what it is they're taking part in and where their place in history will be. And unfortunately, I think for some of these platforms, we're at the point where it's like the QAnon thing, where QAnon started in 2017 and quickly moved to these platforms by 2018, and they did nothing about it until like summer of 2020, when it started to get really out of hand. But you know what? By then it was too late. It already permeated everywhere. People already were able to find their like-minded conspiratorial buddies over on Telegram and other platforms like that. And I think we're at the point now where this is it too. I think it's too late. I think they could do something to help curb it, but we are beyond the point of no return now. Just like we were for QAnon in 2020, we're there now for Libs of TikTok, I think.
I mean, I agree with everything you just said, but just to jump back to the beginning, the idea that this is going to be a slippery slope that results in all free speech being abolished is just silly. Anyone who says that they're a liar or like financially incentivized to pretend that way because like this is how they make their money. or really stupid. But the reality is, I think the slippery slope has already happened, and that has been when, that was when the fairness doctrine was basically just ripped up. And I think people are going to look at the past 30, 40 years of American media in the future, hopefully, if we make it to a future when we actually have actual laws regarding broadcasting, because the reality is a lot of this stuff trickles down from the top. The online content creators who have further monetized being a reactionary by leading people up to these fascisty conclusions, but never quite putting their foot over that line. They get that stuff from Fox News. They get that stuff from the Rush Limbaugh. They get that stuff from the highest levels, and they just strip away a lot of the fanciness and appeal to a lot more of the base instincts of the people who otherwise would be watching that stuff. And so we've allowed this kind of content to be monetized, and that's why a lot of people's argument now is well, if it's monetized already, I don't see why I'm not allowed to make my money that way. And the reality is because America exists in a very terrible paradigm where our media just has basically no responsibility to be factual. Half our newspapers don't even seem to fact check the information that goes in them, and people still defend them as necessary to a sort of freedom that only seems to exist to make those people who work there incredibly wealthy. And we just have a very, very poorly maintained media culture. And now what media literacy means is not, being able to parse out an article. It means, you should read a lot of stuff and figure out which one of these people is lying to you. And that's your job. And we've sort of foisted that off to the population. It's your job to figure out which article in the New York Times is true, which one's been fact checked, which one's been, edited, which one is a lie, which one is just being written because the person needs to make a paycheck this week. It's your job to figure all that stuff out. And frankly, it's not a functional media landscape for anyone to navigate. And certainly it just creates these figures who exist only to appeal to the worst aspects of our society and to make, use the context of, bigotry, the context of prejudice that exists within our society to make themselves rich while making things more dangerous for marginalized people who are already being not just victimized by interpersonal acts of terrorism, but just by structural racism, which of course they pretend doesn't exist. But, whether or not these platforms crack down on these types of accounts, I think depends on whether or not it hits them in the wallet, whether or not they feel, like I said about, the civil cases against Alex Jones, whether or not they feel that kind of stuff might eventually come back to bite them, and you might eventually have somebody sue a Twitter or Facebook or make some kind of allegation against Twitter or Facebook that they had a responsibility to prevent, their kid who was in the Boston hospital from being killed because some radical far right guy or whatever shot it up. And, maybe they won't actually end up having to pay out the way Alex Jones did, maybe they will, but it certainly won't be good for their, their image. And that's what most of these businesses care about, their image.
Right. Apparently, oh, go ahead.
Just one thing, I don't keep up with the libs of TikTok or any of that shit, but there's a new villain from the far right. There's a new type of racist online every week. And the argument is always the same thing, that if you don't defend the right of this person's free speech, it's going to have a negative impact on the free speech of people who this person hates. And it's the most patronizing, ridiculous argument that people make online, especially when you can just look around and see the people that they are actively victimizing are, find themselves further fall into deprivation.
Well, you saw this with the Elon stuff, because when Elon said he was going to buy Twitter, a whole bunch of the worst type of people came back to the site and were pretty active for a while. And then when that's gone, they leave. And I think also you get somebody like James Lindsay, or you kick these people off the platform and all their freaks have to go, be isolated on some other smaller platform making money for some other Silicon Valley corporation.
Right.
Yeah. And, a lot of these people also get off on, Matt was saying, that their whole thing is pretending they don't understand how things work. And, oh, my God, people are just reposting it. And what are you talking about? Blah, 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 blah. And when they get shuttled off to when they get shuttled off to Gab, or they get shuttled off to Truth Social, then they lose the ability to pretend that they're not just bigots. Bigots playing a game with language to prevent any consequences, either social or material. But, maybe they only clamp down on a handful of these types of accounts. And I think that's way more likely than there being any kind of slippery slope where we end up with no free speech, is that they just pick the worst offenders like Alex Jones, and you go, see, we do stuff. We do stuff here.
Right. Yeah. Speaking of Gab, do we have time for one more clip? What time is it even, Matt? Do we have time for one more clip? Or
Which one do you want?
The number 5?
Yeah, we got that.
All right, let's do it. Let's do this clip. Speaking of Gab, Doug Mastriano is the Pennsylvania Republican gubernatorial nominee. He is running, and this is the guy who won the Republican primary after it came out that he was paying Gab, the literally neo-Nazis' favorite social media platform. It's run by a open Christian nationalist, Andrew Torba. He was paying them for services to promote his candidacy. He was paying for ads on the platform. This is where the what was the Tree of Life Temple shooter? Was that the name of the synagogue that basically the shooter was on there? One of those anti-Semitic shooters. There's been a few of them. Was a Gab regular and was post his material there. And this is where Mastriano was deciding to spend his money to promote his campaign, and it seems like it worked out in his favor. But there is this as well. Let's play this clip.
You say this is Julia Green, a prophet. Mastriano's been using to campaign.
They know Nancy can't handle the presidency. No, they know she's a drunk. But they know she is dying, and they helped with that. They are now disposing of anyone they feel is no longer useful to them. She failed the puppet masters with her 2 impeachments that didn't work. No assignment and anything they gave her against Trump, it didn't work. So now she is seen as a failure. Her days are coming to an end, and she will not last until the 2020 midterm elections. She'll be visited by the angel of death for her crimes against my nation, and the blood is dripping from her hands. She loves to drink the little children's blood. By drinking this blood, they believe they will receive a longer life. Yes, a true witch, she really is. She was part of sacrificing the children to Baal. She loved murdering for him. Well, now she will pay the ultimate price with her life. And her life is now over. For the facts against you and the babies she killed, along with giving money from her bills to help with trafficking the children, and of course to finance Epstein Island and that lifestyle.
Yeah. So, Mastriano goes from, well, not goes from, he's doing both. He's sending some money over to Gab to promote his campaign, seeking this woman, this prophet, for advice. And he's campaigning with her too, as well, bringing everyone up on the campaign. Maybe he'll get this woman, Julie Green, and Torba together on stage, and they can have a big old far right extremist on stage, prayer to end Nancy Pelosi for good or whatever. This is deep, like far right extremist, like really deep QAnon style conspiracy theories and shit. This is beyond the pale. This is not we're going to overturn the election for Trump. This isn't even that. This isn't Trump is secretly just fighting the deep state. This is beyond that. This is talking about like Satan, and obviously there's QAnon stuff really all over this, but geez, this is an insane broken person that's that is politically useful to one of the major parties that we have. I mean, when she starts off, she's like okay, I don't like Pelosi. You start off calling her a drunk. That's a little bit weird. I'm not quite sure where you're going with that. And then you realize like the thing she's drunk on, according to Julie Green here, Mastriano's prophet, is
child's blood.
Little children's blood, yes.
And
that's straight up QAnon, yeah.
I'll just say like my analysis of Pelosi is more that she's like beholden to corporate interests and like wealthy folks. I don't really need to go to is she mistakenly drinking child's blood out of some idea that's going to make her live forever. I'm not quite sure how that's useful.
I do like
If you
the
notice,
idea though of like I do like the idea of like goth Nancy Pelosi, like dark Pelosi. She's drinking children's blood and listening to Gwar. And what were you gonna
I
say,
don't know if we
Brandon?
know. I don't know if we know this, and of course, Glass Houses. Her delivery style was very weird because it sounded like she was, it sounded like she was reading something, but then it kind of also sounded like spoken word poetry, but it didn't rhyme. Not that poetry has to rhyme. I'm not a neophyte, but like it was very much like deaf poetry jam, but like QAnon, which I think has a market. Honestly, I can't speak to whether or not Nancy Pelosi specifically sacrifices children to Baal, or whether it's Azazel or any of the other demons from Beelzebub, Lord of Flies, Lucifer himself or themselves. Obviously we live in a gender neutral age, so I don't want to misgender Lucifer. But yeah, no, I think frankly, I don't know. I've watched a lot more conspiracy stuff, so I guess I'm just more immune to these kind of people because there are a lot of them out there. It's just been weirder and weirder to see it like infiltrate more like modern, not modern, but like I would say mainstream political spaces, like how, not specifically QAnon, because QAnon I would still consider like conspiracy light, but like how many more of these people who are like, no, Lyme disease is a gift from God, and I have been blessed, and my medical intuitive tells me that we need to vote for Donald Trump, are now just like on Fox News. It's back when CNN, it reminded me back when CNN used to bring on psychics to tell about the plane crashes. Like it's very like it's new age, pseudo mystical. I dig it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I could go for some of this every now and then, I guess, as long as this guy Doug Mastriano stays far away out of power. Because could you imagine this guy having this woman, this prophet, having the ear of literally the leader of an entire state, and that state being Pennsylvania, nonetheless. Now we're not even talking about we're not talking about like Wyoming or Alaska or something. This ain't Palin like running Alaska. This is PA.
Did she win her election, Palin? I saw she was running.
She did. They do ranked voting up there, so she is one of the two who won. Like the primary is basically all the candidates, not just like the Democrat and the Republican, I believe. It's all the candidates ranked voting, and then the top two. So it could be Republican versus Republican, Democrat versus Democrat, Republican versus Democrat in general, because it's all the candidates in one ranked choice voting, and the top two move on to the general. And she was in the top two. I don't know if she was first or second though.
Well, yeah, but now you have Julie Green, who's going to be eventually, one assumes, the governor of Pennsylvania herself. Like Sarah Palin seems mild by comparison.
Right. Yeah.
Like, she was ahead of her time. I maintain that she came just way ahead of her time. Lauren Boebert is doing everything Sarah Palin did, but worse, and she's getting all of the clout that Sarah Palin never got, and that's just unfair.
She's underrated in being like I guess you could say the mama bear of all of these crazy QAnon beliefs that are now just the norm in the GOP. She was really ahead of her time.
But the thing
she got check them.
The main difference is Palin had that sort of mainstream appeal just by virtue of being placed on the VP ticket, where you had a bunch of normies. I think Boebert is still a little bit like you're online if you know who Boebert is.
Right. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is the current leader. I think Boebert is in her shadow still. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is a little bit more mainstream than even Boebert. I mean, obviously she's not Palin in 2008 level, excuse me. But I think MTG, unfortunately, is breaking through a little bit because she puts herself out there so much.
In my opinion, definitely the wrong MTG to break through to the mainstream, but
yeah, I wish everyone was playing Magic the Gathering. I know, but I don't think that'll ever happen. Yeah. Oh no. Well, guys, let's read a few IMs and then we'll wrap things up here. It's been an absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed doing the show today, hosting the Majority Report, filling in for Sam and filling in for Emma, who fills in for Sam. And if you liked me hosting, make sure to let Sam know that this was great. And if you didn't like me hosting, you'll just shut your mouth and not say a word, okay? So let's get to some IMs. Libtod says Binder needs no introduction to this audience, who were all able to positively identify him by his mangled mispronunciation of Emma's last name. Yeah, that was. What did I call her? Vigilant?
Vigilant.
That was bad.
Vigilant, yeah.
Ooh. Yeah. Ooh. It was pointed out that I also apparently created a new word today when I combined incendiary with insidious, and I said insidiary or something like that. That's what I do. I just make up words. Yeah, I make up words. Yeah,
You're just tired. You're just tired.
Binder. Yeah. Hey, Majority Reporters, loving the interview with Catherine Liu today. Really interesting, nuanced conversation. Also, Binder, many kudos for covering the right-wing co-opting of the Dutch farmer protests on Doomed. Not a lot of coverage in left media spaces. Keep up the great work. Left is bestest. That's from Man Shovel. Thank you so much. Yeah, I covered that 2 weeks ago, I think it was. Go check that out if you'd like at youtube.com/MattBinder. Matt from Denver. Oh, another Matt says, Hi, Matt Jardy Report. Have you seen the body cam footage from the Denver police shooting last month? They just released it, and it shows the guy immediately putting his arms above his head and tossing his weapon aside, away from the cops, but they open fire anyway, shooting into a crowd behind him. I have not seen that. Have you? But I mean, honestly, that also sounds like the description for more than just that one video you're talking about.
Yeah, sounds like
unfortunately. Yeah. Volshell, Matt Jardy Report Worldwide. DNC Google Pundit says, reminds me of the old Eminem Mondays. Would like to see this Matt Jardy Report on the regular. Just saying. Well, thank you. Yes, it did. It felt a little bit like that. Majority Report Wardrobe Coordinator says Binder is all about ethics in merchandising. That's right, Bleck. You gotta get up on those ethics there. Full disclosures necessary. There you go.
Yeah, I don't know about that. The ethics are caveat emptor.
Yeah. Apple Ciderist says Matt went on vacation the same week as Tucker Carlson. Coincidence? I secretly work for Tucker's show. I'm writing his scripts. I don't know if any of you caught that, but yeah. Left is Deft says crudité is a French word meaning rawness. You can use it in a sentence such as Fetterman is bending Dr. Oz over and giving it to him crudité style. Okay.
You could use it that way.
Yeah, you could. Oz's illegitimate house. Yeah, says Oz remembers all his 11 addresses, but not all 4 of his children's names. But he didn't. That's the thing. Like, didn't he claim that he only had like 2 houses because he wanted it to be on the DL that he's a landlord of like 8
he only lives in 2 houses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is not how you respond to a question of how many homes do you own. You say, well, I live in 2.
At least not when you want to be relatable.
Right. New Wave Libertarian Communist says, speaking of Matt Walsh and the Boston Children's Hospital, he's now being a little bitch and complaining that Media Matters is inciting violence against him. He still believes they are doing this surgery on kids at BCH and won't accept any responsibility. The right wants doctors killed. Oh, absolutely. I mean,
also he's bullshitting. The thing about like violence against him, he's fucking. He doesn't care about how unserious that is. He just is saying it to say it.
Right.
You got to watch out for those children's hospitals. They'll really take it to you. And the next, like St. Jude's will be outside his door with them, some spiked bats.
Right. Yeah, they're literally acting like Boston Children's Hospital like goes to schools and convinces children to like come in and like take part in their like whatever their transgender health program is or something like that. No, they're there for children who already identify as trans because they're born that way.
This is the right-wing victim complex. Honestly, in a nutshell, it can be triggered by people existing or trying to exist and live their normal lives if they are existing in some way that, a right-winger feels infringes upon their right to be Christian or straight or white, whatever. It's a sad state of affairs when people are, that zero sum in how they understand the world.
Right. Sean from Maryland says, have you guys seen these Reddit, TikTok, and Twitter posts from teachers around the country talking about middle and high school boys consuming Andrew Tate content and threatening their girl classmates and women teachers like shit? Just really horrifying to see the impact he's having on young men and boys. Yeah, I don't know if you guys discussed Andrew Tate on this show.
I watched the video.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I watched a video. There's been a few videos going around about him recently. Andrew Tate, the ex-European kickboxer who moved to Romania to run like a Hustle University style scheme and avoid rape allegations, apparently is like influencer for the modern day, I suppose.
Yeah, he's a big time creep who appeals to like teenage virgins who are expressing that through misogyny. It seems like. I would just point people towards the debate. Sort of Hassan, I guess, sort of ambushed him. I don't know what it is, but if you search Hassan Andrew Tate, there's a video where Hassan comes on and asks Andrew Tate about how he Andrew Tate has this theory that women are terrible drivers, and his sort of evidence for that is that he's been in a couple of car accidents and the women have been on the other side of this, which Hassan points out, like, that's not exactly scientific thinking. It's probably like a sign that you need therapy for trauma.
Well, I mean, it's the opposite of scientific thinking. If the other variable there is that he's been on those car accidents, so it might just be the opposite, that he's a bad driver, which is way more likely.
Yeah.
Right. Congressional baseball fan says, we got it. Andrew Tate's not going away, unfortunately, so I'm sure he'll be coming up more on this show. He's like single-handedly like reviving the old like men's rights activists, men going their own way, like misogyny. It's pretty crazy. But congressional baseball fan, hi fellas, yesterday was my birthday. Since Sam refused to put me in the lineup, can I get a shofar with just a side of play ball? I don't think we could do any of that today. Matt's in the studio all by himself. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. That's the best we can do for you. Happy birthday though. Shout out to the August birthdays out there. My birthday's in a few days, August 23rd right here. Transgender I can't even Moomin writer. I don't know what I'm sorry. New York
is a cartoon.
Oh, okay, Moomin writer. God, all right, I'm out of the loop. I'm an old man. New York early voting is open until August 21st, and election day is August 23rd. Voting isn't everything, but it matters. And I support the usurpation of Sam Seder, LOL. You know, this Matt Jardy thing might take over. We'll see. Yeah, please, if you are anywhere that's voting on Tuesday in New York or anywhere else, is anyone else doing voting on Tuesday? But if there's anywhere, if you're in a district that there's an election on Tuesday, please definitely go. In my district, there isn't, but I'm not far from the district where Kristen Gonzalez is running against a Crowley. And if you live in that district in Queens, definitely get out there and vote for Kristen Gonzalez. She's backed by the DSA, the Working Families Party, and pretty much every meaningful progressive group. Definitely go out there and support her. And if you're not in her district, do what you can to tell people who are in that district to get out there and vote for her. We'll read one or two more. Let's see. Majority Report wardrobe coordinator says, come on, guys. These attacks on Boston Children's Hospital are clearly just a byproduct of their economic anxiety and love of women's sports. Right. Yes. Train Boy says, I love how Matt Walsh, who literally belongs to a cult dedicated to the preservation of child molestation, is worried about grooming kids. Is the Holy See worried about competition? Yeah, right. Yeah, that's the thing about, and a lot of these guys, I don't know about Matt Walsh, but a lot of the people who are all of a sudden out there doing this are part of that like renewed group of people who like willingly join the Catholic Church as adults. Like
freaks.
Come on.
Super weird,
Yeah.
super stuff.
Yeah. Super. Like
Just learn astrology. Just learn astrology.
Right.
Don't be weird.
Right. Listen, I was raised Catholic, born, baptized when I was weeks old, went to Catholic school, didn't have a choice, read all that stuff, was super into it for when I was a kid because that's how I was raised, was an altar server for a while I was in elementary school. I can tell you right now, anyone who joins that shit willingly as an adult, I would automatically question them and what they believe and their psyche and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
I think people like the hierarchy because like that's really and obviously the pomp and circumstance go along with that, but that's one of the only reasons that you would want to like say prioritize joining the Catholic Church over any sort of Protestant denomination that like could give you the same vaguely similar experience. It's just like the hierarchy of archbishops and popes and like the grandiosity is what attracts them. But like that's the part that is like weird to me because of what the Bible says. But shit, I'm not a Christian, so what do I know?
Right. Yeah. Oh, this is from Doodles. Breaking news. The Memphis 7 were reinstated by Starbucks, Union Strong. Oh, right. I saw that. They had the workers who were fired for unionizing at that Starbucks. It was ordered that they have to be reinstated. All right. The final. Oh, wait. This is pretty good. Vermont Ben says Andrew Tate is Jordan Peterson without the veneer of sophistry.
Well, I mean,
excuse me.
It's funny you say that because I mean, the first time I ever heard of Andrew Tate was when he was in a image with Jordan Peterson's daughter, and I feel like that was a pretty big. I know he was on Big Brother and stuff like that, but as far as like the American audience, I think that was a big boost to his grift.
Right. Sakarubo says we need an Magic the Gathering stream. Maybe we should do that. And the final I am of the day goes to away we go to Vagina Land. Get well soon, Emma. Thanks to both Matts. Left is best. And of course, thank you to Brandon. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. I am doing a live stream on my channel at youtube.com/MattBinder in 10 minutes. Go over there right now and check it out. In 10 minutes, I'll be live on my channel. Matt Leck, thank you so much for steering the ship with me today. Brandon, thank you so much for joining me for the fun half as usual and being great as usual, but especially helping me do the fun half when I've already done the show for an hour and needed a breather every now and then. You really helped me out there. And when's Emma back, Matt? What are you guys doing for tomorrow?
I believe she'll be back for the fun half tomorrow. So yeah.
So what are we getting tomorrow? We're getting for the first half tomorrow. Sam's got a pre-record, right?
Yep, Digby.
All right, sounds great. Check out Sam and Digby tomorrow and a fun half that'll likely include a hopefully recovered or on the way to recovery Emma Vigeland. Oh, I end it with the right pronunciation, right? Take care, everyone. Have a great day.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my